As we have said before, every great story is a trilogy.
Always.
And we're doing a trilogy. We're doing the third installation of a trilogy today, not in the sense that it's like three separate stories. But last week we covered two different Pride-related Beyond Parody stories at the beginning of our episode. We talked about the website, Buy Woke Free.
This is true.
We talked about Heterosexual Awesomeness Month. I'm not celebrating.
No, not on this podcast.
And this week, this isn't really a story, but it's a moment that I feel deserves recognition because it sort of intertwines the two major strands in American domestic politics, but also foreign politics.
And and on this broadcast, we love moments. Yeah.
Because there's this, well, before I get into that, I think I'll read this tweet that I found. And this is real. Like, this isn't satire.
Okay.
This is from an official Twitter account.
Is it posted in earnest?
Posted in earnest. This is not a shit post.
Okay.
And it's from the European Jewish Congress, just like a Jewish activist group, or not even activist group, just like an official organization in Europe.
Okay.
And they said the following on Twitter. During Pride Week, Tel Aviv is displaying special pride flags across the city featuring a widened yellow stripe to honor the 120-plus hostages still captive in Gaza. We want to share it as a reminder that they are in our thoughts every moment. Thank you, Tel Aviv. And they did exactly that. It's a widened yellow strip. They added hostages to the pride flag. They just completely co-opted the pride flag and added hostages.
I'm sorry. What do the hostages have to do with pride?
I don't know. And I'll also point out that they took away the BIPOC elements and they took away the trans elements.
Yeah, they took away like the triangle at the top.
Yeah, and the asex, I think it is, with the purple circle. Yeah, they took away all those.
Now it's just the regular rainbow, but wider yellow for the hostages.
It's the 2014 Pride flag. Yeah.
Wow.
But with the hostages in it now.
Being a hostage, gay.
Yeah. And look, there's always this sort of narrative that Israel likes to latch onto, that they are more Western than sort of their surrounding enemies, like places like Lebanon, Iran, and stuff, which is certainly true. And they also say like, oh, well, our cultures or our political systems are more similar to that of the United States because we're accepting of gay people. We're more in touch with like equality in that sense.
Yeah, we're a more liberal democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East.
And they try often to latch onto, or Zionism tries to claim pride for itself as a way to legitimize itself as a political project. You know what I mean? So they tried to appeal to Western liberals by saying like, oh, well, you don't want to side with Hamas. Hamas hates gay people. We love gay people here in Tel Aviv and here in Israel.
Yeah.
When in reality, of course, Israel doesn't do gay marriages. They recognize them if you do them out of the country.
But they're illegal. You can't get them in Israel.
They don't happen in Israel. And here's another prime example of them sort of co-opting pride or just LGBTQ as a sort of political phenomena. To push their own message, to say like, look, we're with the West. The liberals should stand with us.
It's just how shameless.
Yeah,
being a hostage, not even adjacently related to being gay.
No, no.
I'm struggling to draw the connection there. It's like you could take pretty much anything else that is adjacently related to queerness and put it on a pride flag, and I'd be like, okay,
right. And like the black and brown stripes were added on, I'm pretty sure, because like there's a very distinct experience among BIPOC LGBTQ folks.
Exactly.
Right. Like that's the idea. And to add on the hostages, it's insane. There's no justification for it. They're just doing it. And it's like, I feel like at this point, most of the hostages still over there are just IDF soldiers. Like literal prisoners of war, as we'll talk about in a little bit when we talk about the ceasefire deal. But holy shit.
What a tweet. That's a tweet. You know what I mean? I feel like I can't describe that's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and I feel like it being Pride Month, we're not seeing as much of the. I feel like we've distinctly shifted the last few years.
Yeah.
During Pride Month, like when we first started the pod in 2021, we started it in July, so we didn't get a Pride Month that time. But that was like peak transphobia, peak moral panics, especially like CRT and that kind of stuff. 2022 was really loaded with that stuff as well.
CRT fell off hard.
Oh yeah, but since 2022, I feel like we haven't gotten as maybe it's just this year. Maybe just this year we haven't gotten as like we haven't reached the fever pitch that we've reached in previous years for Pride Month.
This is true. I definitely agree. It's at peak 2022. was when like everything was coming out. 2023 was crazy, especially like within June itself.
The only thing I can think of from 23 is the Target thing, the tuck friendly swimsuits, which was huge, and Bud Light, of course, but that was a little bit before June.
Yes, that's true. I just remember 2023 is when state GOPs just across the country loaded up legislation. I think there was the drag ban that would have banned people performing Shakespeare.
Yeah.
There was a couple other things like related to that they waited for Pride Month to like launch. But all I'm gonna say about this tweet, I don't see Israel taking the heterosexual flag and adding the fucking hostages to it. You know what I mean? They're not recognizing Heterosexual Awesomeness Month. They're taking the pride flag.
Yeah. Maybe it's just recency bias on behalf of me, but I just feel like we haven't gotten as many insane things as we've gotten in previous years for this Pride Month.
Definitely not.
Not that I'm disappointed. Those things are always harmful and bad. I'm just wondering, like, are they running out of steam? Do they not have any more ideas?
Me personally, I was expecting more. Am I happy that my expectations were not met? Yes.
Yeah, we did recently. Ron DeSantis made it, I think, illegal, or he just outlawed the practice of bridges using the lights underneath to make like the pride flag rainbow.
What?
He said that the only colors that they could do during June were the American flag. Of course, so the bridges just ignored this and they did whatever they wanted, but it was funny.
I like how he's not even hiding behind an idea that like, oh, we can't have a bunch of different colored lights because it's like distracting for ships or something. No, you can actually do the American one.
Oh, it's just
you
gay.
Can actually put the heterosexual flag up.
Well, yeah, because if you put up the rainbow, that's gay and that's bad.
This is true.
We're indoctrinating the kids, all the kids that look at the bridges intently and derive some kind of message from them. I guess.
All the boys are going to want to kiss boys, and we can't have that.
Yeah, but here we are. Tel Aviv coming out as explicitly gay, but interestingly leaving off the trans and BIPOC elements.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Not very inclusive.
Not very inclusive. And, maybe given this tweet and given Israel's general co-opting of sort of LGBTQ themes, maybe the right should reconsider their support of Israel. That's woke.
Oh, that's true.
That's woke. It's almost like they can see through it as well, and they know that it's not very sincere.
See, that would be a Pride Month. That would be a Pride Month story right there. The GOP starts turning on Israel because of this. Now that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for to top previous year's events.
See, the problem is like that wouldn't actually come. Well, of course, if it's from the right, it's not going to be a real critique of Israel.
Yeah.
It's just going to come from homophobia and anti-Semitism. Ultimately, we can't have anything good. Nothing ever happens.
I'm saying
nothing ever happens. Welcome back to Head in the Office, everybody. We got a decent amount to talk about this week.
Yeah, we've got a show for you.
We do have a show. We'll say that. We're going to talk about Gaza and a little bit of domestic politics because the House did a thing. And the rule that Congress only does bad things is holding true this episode.
Exactly. And, we can't forget about one of our other favorite domestic institutions. Say it with me now, the Supreme Court of the United States.
The high priests.
The high priest. It is June.
Supreme overload.
Term ends end of June, July. We have decisions that are coming out.
Yep. Society-breaking decisions.
Society-breaking decisions. And we got to brief you on at least a couple of the cases that are going to be deciding on.
And we'll be also stopping by in the middle of this episode two great states in these United States. That's Colorado and Washington. We got some news from their Republican parties. And look, all I'll say before we move on and get into the shilling that we usually do, local Republican parties in blue states, not doing very well.
Crazy.
Not doing very well.
Broke and insane.
You would think that like losing consistently in statewide elections would push you like towards the center, like moderate you a little bit.
That's what it does to Democrats.
That's what it does to Democrats. Not happening in these blue states, as we'll get to later in this episode. But before we get there, I will remind you all, you know what? I'll say it like this. We're struggling to put food on the table.
Tell them.
We live or die by this show.
And I actually sleep behind my chair in the studio.
And if you want us to live, then head over to patreon.com/headintheofficepod.
You can't see it right now, but I have my cereal and my bowls of cereal that I use for dinner every single night right behind me in this chair, which is also where I sleep.
Yeah, and look, we're not asking for charity here. You'll get free or early access to all of our content, and also we're very close to our goal now.
This is true.
We're like $70 away.
So close. We're edging our goal.
$70 monthly away from our goal. And once we get there, that's going to be a new benefit for everybody in the $5 tier and up. That's everybody.
That's everyone. And
on the Patreon.
You can hold it in your hand. And then maybe you can hold it in your other hand.
Oh, We'll get there.
What's
We'll get
going
there. But also before we get into the episode, of course, we got to read our 5-star reviews.
Yes, we do.
How many we got today?
This time we got 2.
We got 2. Let me pull it up. Take the first one.
Yes, sir. This one from OK Vikai ! It just subject line Hiddo. Hello, Hiddo boys. I first want to start off saying I condemn Hamas and then condemn the people that don't condemn the people that don't condemn Hamas. Well said.
Yeah, of course.
I have been listening to your podcast a lot recently thanks to my dad who showed me. Shout out, Pops. It is great hearing these ideas, especially since I come from the red state of Oklahoma. Please send help. And I just wanted to finally write a review since you guys dropped the last episode on my birthday. Happy belated, Victor.
Oh, my God. Victor, happy birthday. How old you turn? Let me guess. 23. Happy 23rd birthday,
Oh, my
Victor.
gosh. Oh, my goodness. The big 2-3.
23 is a big age.
The big 2-3. And shout out your pops.
Yeah, no, really, yeah.
Hiddo is huge with fathers.
Fathers love us. You should put that on a shirt.
Exactly.
The next one, and look, you guys can't cancel me for this.
It's a phonetic pronunciation within the title. What more can we do?
And look, this is a sort of, before we even get into this review, it's a sort of phenomenon that I've seen a lot of leftists saying this following word this way.
Yes.
And I haven't talked about it because I don't really know how to fully articulate how I feel on this, but it's always felt a little corny.
Yes.
To say it in a way that I know you don't usually pronounce words.
It's I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, like, you know how when French people are like, it's not croissant, it's croissant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's very annoying. And also, why would I pronounce something in a way that I don't usually do in like day to day?
But at least when French people say it that way, they're French.
They
are French.
They're French and they're bad.
Well, but what I'm saying is like they speak like that usually.
That's true.
But when you try to, me personally, when you pronounce words in a way that clearly sounds like you are copying or even, dare I say, mocking somebody else's dialect or another people's dialect, it feels bad, and I don't know why leftists do it.
Yeah, this is true.
Just talk like you normally talk. Pronounce words the best you can. And leave the sort of traditional pronunciations to the people who actually exist in that culture. That's all I'm gonna say. But the reason we say all of this is this person put out a phonetic spelling of Hamas, and it says, consider Hamas condemned.
Let's go.
That's how it's spelled. Go. I've been listening to these handsome fellows for almost 3 years now, and as someone who works for a state Democratic Party, I will not be caught slipping. Listening to the boys yap is 1,000 times better than most any meeting I've been coerced into attending. Keep up the good work with the praying hands.
Oh, let's go. And we will.
So thank you for that, and thank you for making us stress.
That's right.
Live on the show here.
You know what I mean? And we will continue our live coverage of Hamas, and then we'll, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was spelled with a KH, so that's just keep that in mind, listeners.
That's what clued us in to thinking maybe this is phonetic pronunciation.
And now, before we have an announcement. As we said last week, we said we'd have an announcement.
This is true.
This is our announcement.
We're announcing.
Well, we're announcing, of course, we've already said that we're going to be doing a live stream on the debate. That is June 27th. We're going to be starting at 8 p.m. Eastern time, maybe doing another little bingo card. The debate officially starts at 9 p.m.
Absolutely setting up another bingo card with Hiddo audience input.
Now, that's a couple weeks from now. We're not doing debate preview on this episode, but we bring it up now to announce that we will also be doing a fundraiser at the same time. We're going to be donating 100% of the proceeds from this live stream to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. That's PCRF. It's a really good organization. And I think one of the few organizations in the area that can actually still accept money from the United States.
Yeah.
We looked at UNRWA, but we're not sure if our money would get there in time for them to use it for anything.
And
you know what I mean?
think because there were some issues we talked about a couple weeks ago with Congress blocking funding for UNRWA.
Right.
I don't know how that works for individual donations. I don't know if UNRWA is even getting in anymore with the things that are going on with Israel and how there were, 2 people from Hamas there that they found out. So PCRF seems to be an organization that a lot of other creators have worked with, and they seem like they can actually get aid in right now.
Yeah, and PCRF works with like countries around the Gaza Strip as well. So it's not just Palestinians. I think they work like broadly in the Levant and so like surrounding areas, right? But we'll be donating specifically to their food fund. And food has obviously been a big issue for Palestinians, and food for children specifically has been a huge issue because children really have been the biggest victims of everything that's going on right now. So that will be happening at the live stream. Again, 100% of the money we make from that live stream, all of your donations
100
will be going to PCRF. And the other thing we have to announce, big announcements today, I'll say.
A big, huge announcement day.
Is that our official third line of merch.
Oh my gosh.
will be coming a day before the debate. That's June 26th.
Can you believe it?
Probably launching around noon or so. Obviously, patrons, you'll be able to get early access or an early look at what we will be dropping. We're not ready to reveal it yet. Samples are about to come in very soon. But get excited for that merch drop, and we bring this up at the same time as the live stream because there will be a set of items that if you can't make it to the live stream, purchase those items. 100% of the proceeds in those items will go to PCRF as well.
Who would have thought?
We will we'll announce exactly what those are a little bit closer, but we've made sure to choose some affordable items, I hope, so that people can donate through Hiddo as much as they can. And did I forget anything?
I don't think so.
Anything else on the merch drop?
Those are the big announcements. We got the merch drop. We got amazing items coming for you to purchase. Maybe wear, excited. Maybe stick somewhere.
Very excited. And also, if you are an angel investor, we do have, as one of the benefits in the angel investor tier, the free occasional item. We're going to make good on that.
Yep.
And you'll be getting something free. We'll announce that a little bit closer to the merch drop, exactly what that is. But expect to be getting a free item in the mail if you're an angel investor before the merch drop goes live.
I think you'll just have to send us your address if you want it.
Yeah, if you want it, we'll just ask for the address and we'll get you your free little item.
Maybe you could say, no, I'm an angel investor on principle, and fine by me. But just let us know.
So get excited for that little live stream, little fundraiser. Figure we could use our influence for good this time. Rather than for bad.
like we usually do. Like we're infamous for.
Exactly. Getting into politics now?
Getting into politics.
I want to talk about politics of the geo variety.
Oh, specifically the kind that we're the best at.
You know, this is the #1 geopolitical podcast.
Many people have said this.
The #1 and frankly, the only geopolitical podcast.
I don't know where else you would go to get this news.
All the others pretend to be geopolitical podcasts, but like... Do they read like 2 hours before the episode every day?
I'm saying, do they sit there on like CNN on Sunday morning and think like, and Al Jazeera?
They don't get up at 8 o'clock Saturday mornings and start reading the news like I do.
Exactly.
To cover politics.
They're not article heads like I am.
They're not.
Oh my God.
They didn't finally buy a New York Times subscription like a few weeks ago.
And use it for the first time this weekend, and it was actually very helpful. Because finally I'm not fucking paywalled for the news that I need to. Information, a look ahead at the SCOTUS section. I used a New York Times article to figure out what's going on ahead. Amazing. Yeah. It's so succinct.
Look, we finally caved and did the $4 a month thing, but you better believe after 7 months when that deal is gone, we're not paying $25 a month.
Out of there.
It's not happening.
$25 a month is ridiculous.
For a New York for a newspaper.
You're telling me I have to pay more for the New York Times than Netflix wants me to pay for things that entertain me? For content I can watch to rot my fucking brain. You're telling me I can do that for cheaper than it is to read the New York Times?
No wonder Trump's going to fucking win. Fox News is free.
Fox News is free. Newsmax is free. OAN is free. I can't think of a conservative news institution that walks around and asks me to pay before I can read an article. Yeah. Lets me click on the goddamn article. Lets me go to their website, but then pops up and says, no.
After you start scrolling, too. You read the first few sentences, like, okay, this is going to be good information. Then they hit you with bam. Start paying. $1 a week.
Bruh.
It's too much.
Fucking liberals.
Now, I would say this week for news on Gaza, it's sort of a filler week. There's not a ton going on. There's not any major news to cover like we have for the past few weeks. You know, we had the protests. We had Biden announcing his proposal or the Israeli proposal for a ceasefire.
There aren't like huge political shifts that are going on within Gaza. Still a big thing that happened, but there aren't like massive waves going on. There's not new. Unfortunately, the things that happened this week are not necessarily new types of things that are happening.
More bad.
Yeah, it's more the same.
We can start with some updates on the ceasefire proposal that we talked about last week, though. So Netanyahu has finally officially spoken on the deal, and the word he used was incomplete.
Interesting.
He said the deal was incomplete.
Well, the incomplete part is the complete eradication of Hamas, I would assume.
Absolutely.
Naturally.
Absolutely. So Netanyahu finally talked about it, but he hasn't fully rejected it, so take that as you will. After Biden spoke, as we said last week, Hamas said they viewed the deal positively. However, Hamas also released a statement on Thursday that said the proposal it received, quote, was devoid of the positive foundations mentioned in Biden's statements, and that there's a difference between what is in the paper and what Biden stated. Namely, Hamas said that the proposal did not include a permanent ceasefire, despite Biden saying that is the goal in his announcement. He said a enduring peace. He said a permanent and immediate ceasefire. Hamas is now claiming that that was not in the deal that they actually read once they got their hands on it. Hamas basically what they were saying is that they think Israel will get their hostages back in stage 1 of this deal and then continue continue doing whatever they want to do with Gaza. And of course, look, I condemn Hamas.
We do.
In the strongest possible terms. But it doesn't seem very far-fetched that this would be the physical deal, the official deal that was handed to them. As you said, I would imagine the deal that Israel wants is the complete eradication of Hamas.
Yeah.
Anything short of that, they wouldn't accept.
As like Ben Gvir and Benny Gantz have stated.
Of course, that's not
or
a
maybe
secret.
not Benny Gantz, but
Yeah, it's not a secret. But in Hamas, you could say they're acting bad faith here. I wouldn't be surprised if they're lying to some extent. But there's no real way for us to know because our government never tells us what's actually in the proposals.
Yes.
They just sort of vaguely motion at it, and I would not be surprised if what Biden said is not fully what's being reflected to Hamas in terms of the actual tenets or provisions of the deal.
Our government loves to hold a press conference to announce that these things are happening, and when people ask questions about it, say, not yet. No.
Yeah.
You can't know that yet. But I will say, I do think there's more plausible deniability on the side of Hamas here in the fact that they have accepted deals that are ceasefires.
A lot of them.
They've accepted, 37 ceasefire-related deals?
Yeah.
Come on here.
Yeah, it's just hard to believe that... Look, Hamas, obviously, bad organization.
Bad organization. I condemn them.
But I would say they're not in the power position here.
No,
they're not the one with the leverage. They're not the one that has the they're always framed as like if they just release all the hostages, everything stops. But in their mind, if they release all the hostages, then they're just going to get decimated.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like they think the hostages are their only leverage. Taking hostages bad.
When Israel has proved time and time again that they will bomb just areas that hostages could be in, what do you think they're going to do when you take the hostages out of the equation? When they have absolutely like nothing holding them back. You know what I mean? Taking hostages, again, bad.
Yeah, condemn it.
I condemn the act of taking hostages, and I condemn Hamas. Who'd have thought? However,
I'm just analyzing the situation.
Exactly.
I'm dealing with the text as it's presented to me. And look, if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't be very confident that Israel will just stop once the remaining 100 people are returned to Israel proper. I just feel like it's not a stretch to say that Israel is going to continue doing what they want to do because they could say, oh, Hamas will do it again. We have to continue.
Especially, again, considering the textual evidence provided to me, Israel is saying government officials, members of the war cabinet, high-ranking members in the government, time and time again are saying they will not stop. They are not even trying to get the hostages back. There are protests going on in Israel about getting the hostages back, and Israel says no. And they have stated with their own words, we want the complete eradication of Hamas. That is not, we want to eradicate Hamas unless they give us the hostages back. That is, we want to eradicate Hamas, no holds barred.
Yeah, and like the hostages are always getting the hostages back is always a stated goal of the IDF. But as we'll talk about soon, and as we've been talking about, they never really live up to that because they've killed the hostages themselves and continue to.
Exactly. Benjamin Netanyahu probably pulled up to the meeting where he rejected the Hamas accepted ceasefire deal with dog tags on. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the hostages, last week Israel reported that they conducted an operation to rescue 4 hostages that were taken by Hamas at the music festival on October 7th. I don't remember the exact name, but
the Nova Music Festival, I think.
You guys know what we're talking about. But from the BBC, and this is a direct quote, many people, including children, have been killed and injured in the area where the operation took place, with images and footage showing significant number of casualties. Again, this is 4 hostages saved. They are out of the Gaza Strip at this point. But Gazan officials have said that Israel killed more than 200 people in the process. That's a quote from the New York Times.
I've seen numbers from CNN that have put it almost at 300 killed and about 600 injured.
Yeah, and this isn't from like Al Jazeera, because people often write off Al Jazeera as like, oh, well, that's a pro-Hamas publication. This is the New York Times and CNN. They have no reason to be highlighting the humanity of Palestinians.
Exactly.
They're from what I can tell, they are telling the truth on this issue. It's also important to know, and I didn't know this, they kind of buried the lead in all the stories I read. This operation took place in a refugee camp.
Yes.
And it featured boots on the ground, so IDF soldiers in the refugee camp, and aerial bombardments at the same time. Obviously, that's going to kill innocent people.
And it's like, it was like, I don't know if you have this later on, but I know the operation was they sent IDF soldiers in civilian clothing.
Yes.
Like not marked.
That's
in civilian
crazy.
clothing, trying to go up to the homes that they knew the hostages were being held at, because some intelligence that the U.S. supplied. I have no idea. I know we worked with them a little bit on this thing. No boots on the ground from American soldiers,
Thank
but
God,
U.S.
yeah.
intelligence was involved. They had soldiers in civilian clothes walk up. They got found out. Things got wrong. People started blasting. There was a firefight. And then they brought in the fucking helicopters to start bombarding the area.
Yeah.
I don't know why we thought that,
in a refugee camp.
Yeah.
And obviously this is going to kill innocent. It's just... it's not worth it to kill, and it's not worth it.
It's good that 4 hostages are out.
Of
However,
course.
incredibly bad that 270 upwards, I've seen estimates from CNN are saying that 270 people died and like 650 people were injured. You're telling me we have 1,000 casualties in this event? And that's
an
okay.
abject failure.
And that's something that's acceptable?
Yeah.
It's absolutely not. If the U.S. military, awful things that we've done in this region specifically, right? In Afghanistan, in Iraq, we would not consider an operation like that. Even with the horrible things, even with the Obama drone strike wedding, we still would not do something like this because the threat of civilian casualties is so high. Planned months and months and months and months to raid Osama bin Laden's compound. We knew where he was. We could have fucking bombed it, but we didn't because we knew the risk of civilian casualties would be too high.
Exactly.
We have a reputation for being not the best when it comes to military operations, for killing a bit too many civilians. Yet we want to say the IDF is still the most moral army in the world.
Yeah,
when we wouldn't even consider anything like that. Insane.
It's like when we were leaving Afghanistan back in 21, and Biden or some general ordered an airstrike on a guy that we thought was a terrorist, but in reality was just a dude from an NGO delivering food aid, and we killed like 6 kids as well.
Yeah,
like we were saying that generals should be in jail for that. Like that's insane.
There were this is
almost 300 people killed and like 600 injured. That's crazy.
I don't understand the moral calculus here.
Yeah, what's the scale?
I don't understand how we can defend this. It's tricky. It's a tricky thing to talk about because you want to get hostages out. Hostage taking bad. I condemn it.
Don't do it.
Don't get it twisted.
I
don't think the hostages should have been hostage in the first place.
That's right.
However, there are ways that you kind of have to go about conducting war-like operations. There are ways that you have to do this that consider the people that did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And that's it. When you have civilians in the mix in one of the most densely populated areas ever, you got to make considerations. You can't just be dropping bombs.
Especially in the context where it's like Hamas isn't threatening to execute these hostages. They're not saying that they are going to, if the IDF doesn't stop, they're going to kill these hostages, whatever. Like, that's not the case. Hamas is very clearly saying, like, you can have these hostages back if you give us Palestinian prisoners back and you leave the Gaza Strip.
If we do a civilian swap, you leave the strip and we can return to our rubble.
That's very clearly that's very clearly the position of Hamas. And for them to do this in the context of that being on the table just shows that like they're not serious about protecting civilian lives, certainly, but also getting hostages out. It's fundamentally unserious. Like, 4 people getting to go home is good. I think one of them actually was an IDF soldier, so there's a discussion around if he's actually a prisoner of war versus like a civilian hostage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But regardless of that, it's like it's not worth it. 1,000 people injured or killed, and you got 4 people out. It's not worth it.
Exactly. 4 people in normal condition.
The only way that you can say it's worth it is if you literally value Palestinians less than Israelis. That's the only way you can square that circle.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised. And it's just, there's a whole nother level of discourse surrounding this event because these hostages were being held in what some members of the media are calling civilian homes. And people are talking about, so civilians are helping out? The Hamas is taking up in civilian homes and holding these hostages there, then we have carte blanche to just do whatever we want. We have how can you say they're civilians when they're clearly Hamas? I would argue if Hamas is in the house, then it's not a civilian house.
Yeah.
I think it's about as simple as that. I would argue if it's a building that Hamas is living in and holding hostages in, it's just not a civilian thing anymore. It may look like a civilian house, but it's just like not. You know what I mean? I don't think we can make the argument that Hamas is doing the human shield thing.
Yeah, well, it's like anytime they talk about the human shield thing, the thing that always got me is like the terrorists hiding behind human shields has always been a sort of thing in war discourse. You know what I mean? We talked about it when we were in Afghanistan or any of the other wars we did over in the Middle East. We're talking about it now. The conclusion I came to was never shoot through the human shield.
Absolutely.
Like, that was never. I never thought that was the answer. Like, it's a frustration. Sure, the terrorists they're using human shields to hide behind. I never thought the acceptable response was kill the human shield as well. That's a crazy conclusion to land at.
And it's also just it's an incredibly frustrating portion of the discourse because it obviously, I'm admitting, optically bad. Hostage taking, again, condemnable. I say it once, I'll say it a million times. You know what I mean? And it's optically awful. Like, these hostages found in a civilian home, but also what are they going to do? Take them to the Hamas compound?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like a densely populated place. Like they're going to be interspersed among the general population.
And it's also when you're discoursing with something like this, where you're working with a terrorist organization. Yeah, that's how terrorism works. You know what I mean? We're not walking around in Iraq or Afghanistan and raiding all these places and calling it like a civilian compound. You know what I mean? Like, despite, maybe there were civilians there. Like, that's not how it is. And I feel like this is kind of an effort by organizations to poison the well when it comes to talking about civilian casualties.
Yeah, because they're trying to say, like, civilians are there, so they're working with Hamas.
Exactly.
Therefore, they're legitimate targets.
Like, I saw some fucking Breitbart article. I don't know how real this one is. I tried to research it more, but I could...
Well, Breitbart.
I could only find well, because my first thought was Breitbart. I'm not going to fucking believe that for a second. I could only find, like, right-wing sources and sources maybe from Israel corroborating it. But they were saying one of the civilian homes was, like, the home of, like, an Al Jazeera cameraman. You know what I mean? And, like, even if it was, I don't think this discredits Al Jazeera.
Right, exactly.
But that's what you're attempting to do when you push something like this. It's the same thing with UNRWA.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say.
Yes. Well, I think 7 members of UNRWA were connected to the October 7th attack. Okay.
It's like, 1,300 member organization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can find somebody anywhere that's done a bad thing. You know what I mean? It doesn't discredit what's going on. This doesn't mean what you think it means. We can't draw these grand narratives like you think we can.
Yeah. Well, what do you know? Another week, another massacre by the IDF. Not very surprising. Glad to know that the U.S. was involved in some limited capacity. Very good. Very good to know that we're even more complicit than before. Speaking of complicity, I want to bring it back domestic to talk about Israel a little bit, because we have another episode, as I alluded to at the beginning, of Congress doing something, but only ever bad things.
Man, my oh my. That Congress of ours.
That Congress of ours.
That Congress of ours.
Someone needs to do so. Someone needs to step in. Last week, the House of Representatives passed a bill that sanctions the International Criminal Court in response to the ICC's top prosecutor seeking an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. The bill is titled, quote, the Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act, which, for those keeping track, the acronym there is the ICC Act.
They need to take acronyms away from members of Congress.
It's corny.
I'm so goddamn sick of all these crazy ass words in these bill titles just to call it some snappy acronym. I'll go so far to say as I condemn that as well. This is if condemnations are the theme of this episode, I strongly condemn the practice of acronyms in bill titles.
It's also just confusing.
Yeah.
Like, the ICC Act is sanctioning the ICC. That doesn't make sense.
You would think the ICC Act does something like establish the ICC.
All right, joins the Rome Statute.
No.
This bill actually, quite the opposite. It requires sanctions and visa restrictions on any person that works for or provides funding for ICC prosecutions against U.S. officials, Israeli officials, or other allied officials that are not party to the ICC and the Rome Statute. This bill passed 247 to 155.
Wow.
Mostly passed by Republicans, but they did have 42 Democrats joining with the GOP majority. So, not great.
What an awful bill.
Fucking joke.
Why?
They shouldn't have gone after our boy Netanyahu, I guess. Almost said Hamas.
They shouldn't have gone after our well, in a way.
Yeah, well, yeah.
In a way, they shouldn't have gone after our boy who the president has said numerous times is about to cross the line. He's getting there. He's going to cross the line. Maybe he's crossed that line, but can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's we really just no respect for international institutions. I get we get to hide behind like, oh, well, we're not party to it, so we don't need to respect it type shit. But it's like a lot of other countries are. Yeah. And they do have jurisdiction within Gaza because Palestine is a signatory to the Rome Statute. If you want to respect international law, look, you can disagree with it, but to completely sanction the prosecutor who's just asking questions is crazy. Asking questions, but in the good way.
Exactly, yes.
Now, as I said, the bill was supported by the entire Republican Party in the House, but was introduced by a friend of the show, Representative Chip Roy.
Oh, he's a good guy.
Recurring character as of late.
That's a good man there.
Yeah. In a statement, Roy said, quote, "This sends a strong message to the ICC that we will not tolerate their outrageous attacks on Israel, but let's be clear, this isn't just about Israel. This is about ensuring our nation's sovereignty is protected as well as our service members. Absent decisive leadership at the White House, Congress must stand in this breach, defending our allies and our sovereignty." Load of nonsense here, because what are you talking about our sovereignty? Biden's not under investigation.
It's unclear to me who this bill is for.
Yeah.
Is this bill for the nerds out there?
It's for Nikki Haley.
No, literally. It's for the, I guess, war criminal nerds out there.
John Bolton.
The people who want to nuke Iran. But, even maybe that's a group that deserves catering to every once in a while. I don't know. Me personally, I wouldn't think so. But
Right.
I would hardly think that that's like a significant voter block.
Yeah,
They got to be acting on principle here.
The way he's talking about our nation's sovereignty got me feeling like we're in the Cold War again.
Yeah.
Like what are we talking about our nation's sovereignty when an Israeli official has a potential warrant against him? What are we talking about?
That's not going to be acted on unless he leaves.
Unless he arrives in like a member country to the ICC, which, he could just not do.
Exactly.
So what do you mean our nation's sovereignty? Our nation's right to self-determination is being threatened by the ICC seeking a warrant for a guy that is the leader of another country? It doesn't make sense.
ICC didn't even come after our war crimes. We're chilling here.
And maybe they should.
Yeah, maybe.
But they haven't.
We're chilling.
Cross that bridge when we get there.
We're fine.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton is not Bill Clinton. George Bush is fine.
George Bush is chilling.
George Bush is fine. Nothing's going to happen to that guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the other guy that we're worried about. We don't even like that guy. No American president in modern history has even liked the guy that's the subject of this.
Yeah.
This bill is purely for the love of the game.
Yeah, for the love of the game and the fucking hate of Palestinians.
It's an awful game.
Now, it's unclear if this will make its way to the Senate and pass. I think there is like a matching bill that's been introduced, but it's not clear if that's going to get through the filibuster. And Joe Biden has already said that he's not going to sign it into law because, it's basically what we said. Sanctioning the ICC isn't really going to do anything to put pressure on Israel, or I guess lift pressure from Israel, put us in a position to deal with this conflict in a greater way. It's useless and actively it's counteractive.
It's just virtue signaling in this way for Israel is just so weird.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I get the I don't get it. The anti-Semitism bill.
Yeah.
From like a couple months back. I understand where you're trying to go with that virtue signal, especially like in the moment that was happening then.
Right.
But this is for Nikki Haley.
Yeah.
That's not a voter block.
yeah. It's good though. It really is indicative of where we are, I would say.
Lunatics.
Yeah, it's not good to see, and again, just making a mockery of these international institutions that we helped set up but didn't sign on to.
I wonder what notable Democrats voted for that.
I don't know. It's got to be just all like the moderates.
I think like Alyssa Slotkin voted for it.
It's like I feel like if you're in like a red, probably.
Yeah.
If you're in like a reddish, purplish area, I gotta feel like your voters aren't really considering voting for you based on if you sign this bill or not. You know what I mean?
I guess it would be for AIPAC money.
Yeah, I guess so. But you're still gonna get. You don't need to do this to get the AIPAC money.
Yeah,
as long as you signed everything else. You'll
did
get
you
the
say?
AIPAC
Did
money.
Chip Roy bring it up, or did we just have a quote from him? Like who
Chip Roy was the sponsor.
He
of
was
the
the
bill.
lead.
Yeah,
man, whatever.
He was the lead guy.
That's so corny.
Mike
bro.
Johnson spoke out in favor of it. He was very, very much in favor.
GOP Congress people are allergic to just doing their job.
Oh yeah,
they're allergic to actually focusing on any material issue that actually matters, and they love crafting bills that mean nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Oh my goodness, man. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, then the corny acronym, the ICC acronym, it's bad. It's bad.
Stop cooking. Everyone knows 2024, it's an election year, right? You know what else is an immutable fact? Wednesday weenies always lose to the weekly news cycle.
You're always behind.
This is even more undeniable in 2024. These primary Iowa caucus happening on a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Super Tuesday, that's in the name.
Yeah.
Wednesday weenie, again in the name. If you want to get ahead of the news cycle, you need to head on over to patreon.com/headintheofficepod.
Listen, if you want the news when it happens rather than after it happens, consider becoming a patron. It's a good way to support the show, and it's a good way to stay up to date on everything this year as we deal with this tumultuous election season together.
Wear that Head in the Office patron badge on your sleeve. You can run around always. I'm a patron in the office. I get the news when it happens.
Back to the episode. That wraps up news on Gaza for this week, and I think that means we can go to StateWatch.
StateWatch.
We're bringing it back domestic and even local.
Uh-huh.
We're going to be talking about two states, and as I said at the top of this episode, Republican parties in blue states simply aren't doing well. And I don't know if this would be a sort of like sub-theory within the ratchet effect theory, but it really seems like when a country or when a state is more red, the Democrats moderate. But when a state is more blue, Republicans get extreme.
Yeah.
I don't know what explains this. I don't think I can articulate this theory in a way that would like really come across as cogent, but it seems like this is just the truth.
Because it's like, for example, you see literal Nazis in the Republican Party and like state and local GOP. You see state and local GOP members defending child marriage.
Yeah.
Saying insane things like we're about to cover. You do not see state and local Democrats praising Marx. You do not see them popping up with Maoist policies.
Yeah.
There's nobody that's anti-landlord running around the Democratic Party. Like it just doesn't happen. They're not spewing revolutionary leftist rhetoric.
The furthest left Democrats we get are in purple states.
Yeah.
Which to me...
and they want free lunch for elementary school kids.
Right, which tells me that Democrats get the most extreme when they are trying to drive contrast as much as possible because they think that will allow them to win in a purple state like Minnesota or Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and so
then
on.
they win. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
It's like the national DNC should learn something.
Yeah. But this doesn't really happen in red states for Democrats. And in blue states, Republicans just go fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And I don't know what explains it because, again, you'd think that if you're in a blue state and you're a Republican, maybe moderating a little bit, you could win some of the more conservative-leaning liberal votes.
Because there's so many.
There's a lot of them you could win.
That's a big block right there.
I'm sure there's lots of populations in blue states that are very wealthy, very white, that would be willing to vote for you if you moderate it a little bit, but they just go fucking, balls to the wall, insane.
And it's really just an issue, just like tone down your rhetoric. Yeah. that's what it is.
I could do being evil better.
I'm sure there are many people that love your policies, whether it's child marriage to 0% taxes for rich people.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You just got to tone down the Nazi shit. That's all.
Well, starting off with Colorado here, and I'll issue a content warning for extreme homophobia.
Nice.
It's going to get rough for the next few minutes. But starting in Colorado, I'll just read this headline.
Okay.
Again, Colorado, very blue state.
Yes.
Not going to be changing anytime soon.
I'm pretty sure like weed's legal in Colorado, yeah?
That was the first one.
Exactly. Blue state.
Elected a blue senator back in 2022.
But
it's a blue state.
Elected Lauren Boebert.
That's true, but
this is our theory, you know what I mean? The most insane Republicans coming out of pretty blue states.
This might be the first ever sound political science theory of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
It's going to be true 100% of the time.
The first Hiddo push forward political theory. People are going to be sitting in their poli-sci classes in 2042. And they're going to be like, oh, and then Hiddo brought this up.
Yeah, and that changed the game forever.
Exactly. That changed how we thought about politics.
So this headline is, quote, Colorado Republican Party calls for burning of all pride flags as Pride Month kicks off. This is a story out of USA Today from last week, and it seems like Colorado Republicans are not doing very well.
It's just like it's the all pride flags.
All pride
flags. The burning of all pride flags.
And this isn't an exaggeration, by the way. This saga started when the Colorado GOP posted on Twitter, quote, burn all pride flags this June. And there was a little gif of a fire underneath. It was just the official Republican Party in Colorado tweeted this out. Pretty unambiguous, kind of on the nose, you know?
Wild.
What happened to subtlety?
See, Michigan's a little purple. I feel like we're leaning more and more blue, like since the 2020 election. But, purple state, at least in 2020. Our GOP doesn't act like this.
Sometimes, they are pretty crazy.
They're nuts, but they're not burn all pride flags, fire gift.
But you can find moderates.
Yeah.
You can find lots of moderates.
You can see tweets on the Michigan GOP that's like, okay, whatever, come to the Mackinac Leadership Conference, do this, do this. And then there's a banger every once in a while. But it's nothing like this. Oh, my God.
And then in an email blast to continue this story, the state GOP in Colorado said, quote, the month of June has arrived, and once again, the godless groomers in our society, back to 2022, I'm telling you, the godless groomers in our society want to attack what is decent, holy, and righteous so they can ultimately harm our children. Again, this isn't like satire. This isn't just one lone wolf acting on their own. This is the official GOP in Colorado putting this out there, putting pen to paper, or I guess keyboard to computer screen, and writing what they believe, sending it to their supporters.
This flowed from someone's fingers. This flowed from someone's heart and mind onto your screen.
And then once again, all good stories are a trilogy. We got a 3-parter here. The party was called out, naturally, for this being hateful filth during Pride Month, like pretty blatantly just being bigotry. And so chairman of the Colorado GOP, Dave Williams, doubled down and said, quote, we make no apologies for saying God hates pride or pride flags, as it's an agenda that harms children and undermines parental authority. And the only backlash we see is coming from radical Democrats, the fake news media, and weak Republicans who bow down at the feet of leftist cancel culture.
Oh, I love all the buzzwords that were in there. I love that so much. I feel
the rhinos.
I feel like maybe this is controversial. I feel like cancel culture does not get brought up as much as it used to maybe a year or two ago. You know what I mean? So when I hear it right there, it's kind of making me nostalgic.
Oh, yeah, I miss it.
It's like,
simpler times.
Whoa, you're bowing down to the woke leftist mob. You're bowing down to cancel culture, really.
I miss that, man. We used to have a real country.
Oh, I'm saying, it used to be so good.
But
Discourse, and now you only get it from shitty comedians.
Yeah.
That nobody wants to listen to anymore.
But here we have the Colorado GOP just blatantly coming out being homophobic, saying being gay is bad. And once again, as we've been saying for literal years at this point, equating all of Pride or all of the LGBTQ to being groomers or inherently harmful of children is to authorize violence against this group, right? Yeah. That's pretty much the intended point. But thankfully, the Colorado GOP won't be taking control of the state anytime soon, but it's an excellent argument for continuing to vote in your state and local elections.
Absolutely.
Do not let these people gain any semblance of power in your state, because it's pretty clear what they want to do. They're off their fucking rocker.
It's pretty clear that if they got power, it would be Florida, but so much worse.
Yeah.
But so much worse. And I don't know, if I'm advancing the theory that you've put forth so far in this segment, right?
Well, that's what scholars do. They build on each other's theories.
Exactly. I would have to say I feel like an element of why state GOPs in blue states are so just dig their heels in the sand so much is that maybe because as they lose broader support, they can lean harder and harder and harder on the religious right, on the fringe elements of that as their core base that will always vote for them. And I think maybe they're overestimating how many there are, and they're thinking that they can win. But I don't even want to say that they think that they can win anymore. I think that ever since probably ever since abortion was overturned, bringing this episode it's all interconnected.
Full circle, yeah.
That's intersectionality, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly what that means.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's 100%. That's what that term is. If I'm being intersectional about this pod, I think ever since the abortion decision, the GOP broadly has just forfeited any ideas of winning, and they are staking themselves on their awful principles that are deeply unpopular.
Yeah, well, and that was my other thought, is maybe these state GOPs in Colorado or Washington, we're about to talk about, in very blue states, maybe they've just given up on winning, and they're just kind of coasting, knowing that they'll have a job because they'll have donors coming in, and they're official. They're official. They occupy official positions. They're pretty ensconced in their positions. They're incumbents. They're not going to lose anytime soon, because who's going to challenge them for a fucking state seat in the Republican primary? So maybe they're just we're fine being in the minority for the next 3 decades or whatever, because I'm going to be fine. I'm going to have a job. I'm going to get paid.
And it's also, I feel like it's related to, we used to talk about, I think during the 2022 election, back when Madison Cawthorn, or the first year of the pod, we would talk about Madison Cawthorn every once in a while. He's the guy who was in the wheelchair that stood up at the RNC, right?
Yeah, he stood up at the RNC and then outed the GOP for having orgies in D.C. and then lost his primary.
So I wonder if these things are connected. But either way, he was a young buck. I think he was the youngest member of the House to be elected in the GOP or something like that.
Yeah.
It was something crazy. And we advanced another foundational piece of Hiddo theory that I feel like these younger guys that are coming up in the GOP have come up in a landscape where they haven't necessarily taken in the political savvy that dudes like Mitch McConnell had before. The ideas that we need to mask our beliefs to win because our beliefs are deeply unpopular and nobody really likes us.
And also the institutional knowledge as well.
Exactly.
They don't have time for that.
We need to engage in strategy in these things. And I feel broadly since 2022 kind of, and especially since the Dobbs decision, the GOP has forfeited that. And these young bucks that have come in, or the guys that have risen to popularity, are the guys that are just willing to say whatever. And they can rely on the fringe aspects of the GOP that are I fucking hate gay people. I literally hate women. I don't think women should. The Harrison Buckers, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe this is kind of intertwined with the Trump effect, and now people that sort of follow the political, the ideological strand that Trump follows, they become more popular statewide because people are looking for candidates that mirror Trump.
Yeah,
it's the rise of people like Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and so on.
Because it's
I don't know. It seems like a special case out of these very blue states, though.
Yeah, and it's I bring up Dobbs specifically because after Dobbs, we've seen literally every single time abortion is on the ballot, it is won.
It won't lose?
It will not lose.
We got a couple of states in November that I think are voting on it too.
Exactly. Yet the GOP continues to stake themselves on anti-abortion rhetoric and anti-abortion policies, despite the fact that they are literally losing because of it. I feel like what's going on with pride posting, one could say, is sort of an aspect of that specific brain disease.
Yeah, and the age-old question of why do they keep supporting wickedly unpopular things? I still don't have an answer other than it's brain rot. They're letting the base kind of run away from them. They keep upping the ante, so they can't really back down from these extremist positions.
Yeah.
And of course, fascism. It's fascists themselves have never been intelligent
True.
It's kind of the opposite of what they're all about. You know, thinking through your beliefs and sort of introspection is not core to the fascist agenda, I would say.
Like you up your rhetoric so much to a point where you literally do back yourself in a corner. Because if you want to seize power in a system where you actually have to like vie for it in the court of public opinion, you can't just take it like a total fascist takeover. You can't lower the ante, or else you will lose your most ardent supporters.
Exactly, yeah.
You completely have to change who you are.
That's the group of people that Trump has captured, right?
Yeah.
Is the people that he galvanizes by talking about, you know, how immigrants are poisoning the blood of the country, or about how, I don't know, the global cabal is going to take over, you know, or the global cabal runs the world and we need to be skeptical of that. Right, whatever. It's these conspiracy theories that, they can't really back down from now.
Like
it
Q.
seems it's getting away from them. Yeah,
they kind of
QAnon
backed
too,
down from QAnon. QAnon fell off like hard.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not because people necessarily backed off on it. There was just like a fall off. And
maybe
I
it makes
don't
a
know
comeback,
why.
though.
Maybe QAnon is back in a big way in 2024.
Maybe it makes a comeback. But Washington.
And
I'm not talking about Washington, D.C. I'm talking about the western side of the country here, the Northwest. We're talking about the state of Washington. Now, this is a piece of news that we missed that we got to catch up on, but I thought it's notable, especially in the context of STATEWATCH, because at the end of April, the Washington GOP held their party convention where they had some interesting things to say.
Okay.
Namely, the Washington GOP came out against the Washington GOP passed a resolution in favor of repealing the 17th Amendment. And now, for those of you that aren't political science scholars, that's the amendment that allows citizens to elect their senators directly. Before the 17th Amendment, state legislatures would appoint the senators. Some of them had already changed the rules, like state by state, saying like we'll just let the people decide, but it wasn't an established norm nationwide. The 17th Amendment said the citizens of a state directly elect the senators, same way that you elect your House member in your own district.
They
for
said
example.
we're going to, focus on the principles of democracy,
right?
And it is a republic.
Representative democracy.
I'm going to get ahead of all the conservatives in the YouTube Shorts comments talking about it's a republic, not a democracy. They're leaning more towards democracy.
Well, and a republic is just a synonym for representative democracy. Of course, that's what a republic doesn't mean. It's completely removed from the power of the people.
And representative democracy, roundabout way of saying democracy.
And look,
democracy with extra step.
Marcus Aurelius would not like this new definition of republic. I'll say that the old emperors, the people that they look up to,
the guys you love so much.
But they passed this resolution in favor of repealing the 17th Amendment, mostly because I think that they want states to have more power, not necessarily the people of those states. Of course, seems like a states' rights kind of thing.
Interesting.
One person in favor of the resolution, a delegate there, literally said, quote, "We are devolving into a democracy." It's interesting to use the word devolving in the context of the 17th Amendment, because that was like 150 years ago.
Yeah, that was a couple constitutional conventions later.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Like now you're angry about the 17th Amendment?
Yeah, we really devolved.
Women couldn't vote at that point. Like, what do we? Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this guy's opinions on more people being able to vote. You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Now there was at this convention, I watched some of it. They had like the 3-hour video recording. I got to see a snippet.
Okay.
It was very exciting. There was some opposition to it. Some people did vote no, so it wasn't complete ideological homogeneity, but the reason that a lot of people were voting no was because they didn't trust the state of Washington to pick a senator that they would like. They weren't principally against repealing the 17th Amendment. They just didn't trust the Democrats, the liberals in their government to pick somebody that would represent them, the conservatives, appropriately.
I wonder if they would, see that and then come to think, maybe it would be a problem to repeal the 17th, and maybe people would not get the adequate representation or have a chance at adequate representation.
Well, it's funny, yeah, because they're walking backwards into just being good with the 17th Amendment, because like that's the point, right?
They're like, oh wait, we wanted to repeal this, and then we realized we would not be represented. Oh, maybe I should have a hand in this.
Yeah, exactly. Oh. They're just actively disenfranchising themselves. It's funny. It's very funny. But that wasn't the only thing that I thought was notable. They also passed a resolution at the same convention that the Republican Party should stop using the word democracy. The resolution says, quote, "Every time the word democracy is used favorably, it serves to promote the principles of the Democratic Party, the principles of which we ardently oppose, and, quote, we encourage Republicans to substitute the words republic and republicanism where they previously would have used the word democracy."
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that is not how that works. That is not what those words mean.
What do you mean?
like democracy does not mean Democrat.
Well, no, I think they mean like Democrats want people to be able to vote.
Oh,
well, yeah, because like that's
I thought they were making like a I don't know, an etymological
yeah.
argument. You know, I thought they were being like, oh, Democrat, democracy, Republicans obviously love republics, so we have to say republicanism whenever we want to talk about democracy, despite that not being what it is.
You know, people often conflate that, but like when like Democrats doesn't mean like direct democracy or anything
exactly.
like that. It never has.
And it's like to think it does would ignore the party switch as well. Like
and
saying
I think,
democracy, oh, does this also promote the principles of the Republican Party back in 1856?
Well, and the party used to be one, and it was Democratic Republicans. You know, like however many hundreds of years ago, it was just one party before they split off. But yeah, no, the terms, people conflate it to mean like, oh, Republicans like republics, Democrats like direct democracy. That's not what that means.
Exactly.
It's just the name of the fucking party. You know what I mean? And I think what they're saying here is the Democrats are more in favor of direct democratic action, and Republicans should be not in favor of that. Is what I think they're saying.
Yeah. You know, me personally, I purged the word. You know what happens when you mix yellow and blue from my vocabulary because I do not support that party.
Oh, I guess I kind of buried the lead on this one. They also said something. This wasn't a resolution, but the delegates that were speaking also said something about how the Electoral College used to choose the president, not the people, but like in a positive way. So really just backsliding into the elitist systems we used to have that still kind of, you know, the zombie of these elitist systems still exists today.
You know, and all I'm going to say is like, if you don't have like land, like if you don't own land, who are you to say that, who are you to have any say over what happens with that?
Well, it's like, hear me out. Like the fundamental building block of society is the family unit.
Yeah.
Why does that family unit need more than one vote? Just let the man cast the vote for the family.
That makes sense, and that we can republic the family unit.
Exactly,
I mean?
That's a republic. That's what a republic is.
It's an elected republicanism.
Complete nonsense. But yeah, look, Republican parties in blue states are not doing well. Just two prime examples about why you need to vote in state and local elections. If you can't stomach voting for Joe Biden, you have a while to figure that out. Of course, it's not November yet. Still think it's the best idea. But if you right now cannot fathom the idea of going out and voting for Joe Biden in the presidential,
please vote in your state
at
election.
the very least, make a plan right now to vote in your Democratic primaries. You probably have some coming up, and then vote for Democrats in your state and local elections because it does matter.
You could write in uncommitted for the president. You could write in whatever. You could write in me for the president. You could do that. You could do whatever you want. Just please vote in your state and local elections. Do not let these lunatics take power.
I'll also note that like a lot of people like look, and it's fair to complain about your options. You know what I mean? Like that's part of representative democracy. It's part of our great republic.
I love complaining.
That we as citizens complain about the options that we have on our ballot. But I will say there is a primary process. There used to not be. Progressives of the olden days fought for an open primary process within the Democratic Party. Now we have it. We should utilize it the best we can.
Well, me personally, I think the parties should be able to pick the nominee.
Well, and that's how it used to go. That's how it used to go, is like the people didn't get a say in it. The Democratic Party used to do a whole lot of fucky stuff when people would try to elect somebody that the party didn't actually want.
Yeah.
But look, we have primaries now. The primaries determine who will be your options in the general election. We often hate to see moderates or centrists or even conservatives within the Democratic Party end up on the ballot, and us being progressives have to vote for them because there's no other option. So vote in your primaries. In places like Michigan, we got Alyssa Slotkin, a centrist, running against a progressive, Hill Harper. I would say turn out for your primary elections.
At the very least.
So at the very least, you can say, well, I didn't vote for them to get on the ballot. And when the general election comes along.
Exactly. You can show up and you can be like, oh, man, I really didn't want Alyssa Slotkin to be the person. But, hey, I put board in for Hill Harper.
Yeah, and look, a lot of people, they like to say, that, you know, it's fair to be frustrated with the political process, with our government. I'm frustrated with it
all the time.
But a lot of people resort to saying, I don't care about voting anymore because voting doesn't work. And to quote one of our mutuals on TikTok, we don't know if voting works because we really haven't tried it. Turnout is incredibly low in midterm elections and in primaries. And if we start turning out more for those, then maybe we can get a little bit, some better outcomes, maybe.
Especially primaries. I never hear anyone that is not our level of into politics ever talk about a primary.
Yeah.
I never heard that word before.
They're important.
Incredibly. Oh, my goodness, people. We fought for these changes.
Especially for like the statewide races, like senator or even like your House member. Like if you get a better candidate in the primary, then you'll get to vote for a better candidate in the general election.
Crazy.
And people don't turn out for that. Look, I'm not the type to blame the population for how bad the government is, because obviously, there's layers here. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have direct control over what they do. There's obviously the influence of big money and outside countries that can influence our country. Of course, we don't have control over any of that. But to some extent, it is true that you get the democracy you vote for.
Yes.
And if we want to make it better, gotta start somewhere.
So there's a lot of people that don't go out and vote explicitly because I don't trust politicians. I don't do this. I feel like they feel disenfranchised by the choices that they have. Mm-hmm. There are avenues that we can take to get better choices.
Yes.
And that's what the primary process is all about. That's why it's so important.
Yep.
That's why I'll be there on, I need to look up the date of the Michigan primary.
August 4th or August 8th.
That's why I'll be there August 4th. Hill Harper, baby, come on.
Yeah, gotta vote. Look, gotta pick somebody.
Pick somebody that's not Alyssa Slotkin, please.
Exactly. Look, as we've been saying for months now, progressives never get ideal options.
No.
There's never been a time in human history where progressives were like, oh yeah, I'm perfectly happy with where the government's at. It's just not in our DNA. It's not who we are. It's not what the ideology is about, being satisfied with what we got. We're a sort of insatiable group of people, an annoying group of people even. Mm-hmm. So go out and get the best you can. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And
try your hardest.
And if it doesn't end up the greatest, if you got to end up voting for a moderate, then try again next time.
Have you ever wondered what we're thinking about during the week?
Well, I know what I'm thinking about.
I know what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
I probably know what this guy's thinking about too, but do you? I don't think you do. But if you want access into, I don't know, my mind palace, the inner workings of what's going on, how I come up with the bars I need to develop the show every week, to produce this wonderful podcast we bring to you every week, why don't you head over to X, formerly known as Twitter.com, and give us a follow, You
can also consider becoming a subscriber on YouTube.
That's right.
You could follow us on Instagram, see what we're shitposting on the stories.
Oh my gosh.
We have a plethora of options available to you if you want to engage with the Hiddo community. So consider following us on social media. It's completely free.
For free.
It's completely free, and it supports the show.
And, a great reason why it's important to be involved in your primary process pretty much at every level of election, state, local, federal, presidential even, is because when we get to those big boy elections, they control who's going to be on things like the Supreme Court.
Uh-huh.
And this term on the Supreme Court, we have some pretty consequential decisions that could be delivered as soon as next week, as soon as the day after this podcast airs.
Of course.
If we some of these decisions could come out.
Yeah, maybe SCOTUS will come out and be like, 17th Amendment.
17th Amendment, that's just... SCOTUS comes out in a surprise decision. 17th Amendment.
Like, why did we ever... That's not constitutional.
That shit's kind of whack, actually.
Bill of Rights, even.
Yeah, there's nothing... The founders did not... They could do what they did with, what was it, New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, and say, we actually need to only refer to what happened in history to decide how we're going to handle this type of law.
James Madison extended beyond his capacity as president. We're striking down... then they strike down, 3 centuries of precedent.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And as they should, they're constitutionalists. They're originalists.
It is crazy that we can I got trouble remembering people's names, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But on the pod I can whip out West Virginia v. EPA. A little inside baseball, but it's crazy how we just remember these things.
No, I have maybe this is a little outside of the pod, but I remember one time we were talking to one of our friends' moms, when we first started the pod in their kitchen when we were at our friend's house, and she was asking about the pod, and I have a notoriously just awful memory in general when it comes to anything. We're talking to her, I'm whipping out the most obscure laws I had ever thought of at that point. All of a sudden, everything in my brain had come was like, well, actually, have you considered when this happened? Well, this Supreme Court case set this precedent. Oh my goodness, man.
Yeah, kind of ridiculous. I can't remember individuals for the life of me.
Absolutely.
But you want to hear about a Supreme Court case? It's locked up in here. I got you.
Especially one we talked about on here. New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. Oh, my
I got
goodness.
all 152 episodes downloaded in my head.
I can't believe that decision came out in 2022 at the same time the Dobbs decision came out, because the precedent that the Bruin decision was that it was something to do with it set a new precedent on how we handle gun laws, new gun laws that are enacted. And basically, Clarence Thomas and his colleagues said, well, we actually have to refer to how they handled these things in history.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's the precedent now when it comes to interpreting gun laws. Well, what would the founders have thought about this? The founders could not have predicted that I could put a fucking switch on a Glock.
A dick and balls.
I'm sorry. The founders did not consider I could have a Glock with a dick in my lap. I'm in traffic.
Man, it took the founders a minute to reload a musket.
The founders had no idea about gun bars. They were not rapping. Like, oh my goodness, man.
Yeah, that decision got completely overshadowed by, the end of abortion rights in this country.
Exactly. Like you couldn't put a switch on a flintlock pistol. That's not what's going on. You know what I mean? But either way, that's 2 terms ago.
That's 2 terms.
Last year, I feel like we kind of got by.
Well, we had the gay website.
The gay website. There were 2 gay website decisions that were bad.
Yeah, we had a few other things that I can't remember.
Moore v. Harper was good. They did not end democracy with Moore v. Harper, although the decision we covered 2 weeks ago is kind of bad in a similar way, just not as far-reaching in its consequences.
Yeah.
And I can't really remember what else happened last year. Obviously, 2 years ago, the Dobbs decision, the New York gun decision, everything else is crazy. This year, I feel like we got some pretty crazy stuff.
Oh, some good ones.
Oh, and 2 years ago was also the EPA, West Virginia versus EPA, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was bad.
Interesting. Bad. So, 2 weeks ago, like I alluded to, SCOTUS delivered the ruling that essentially will just allow racial gerrymandering because we're not excluding black people, we're excluding Democrats.
Yes.
Who happens to vote that way at a higher proportion? I don't know. You tell me.
Well, look at them. They're Democrats.
Look, they look like Democrats.
Just an educated guess.
I can tell by looking at them that they're Democrat. And that's the precedent that we have now for what is and what isn't racial gerrymandering, at least at the level of the Supreme Court. So that's crazy. But I feel like that's not as crazy as some of the things that we have to talk about. And now is as good a time as ever to see what we got looking ahead of us. So I want to start off again by talking about the Dobbs decision. Surprise, surprise. We just cannot get away from it. One of the craziest things to come out of the court ever.
Yeah, one of the biggest decisions of our lifetime, certainly.
Probably the biggest decision since I've been paying attention to politics or since I've been conscious.
Maybe since except like gay marriage
That's
in
true.
2015.
Yeah. The biggest decision since I've been intelligent.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I'll stake it on that. The biggest decision since I've been smart. Yeah, it overturned super precedent that was Roe v. Wade.
Gonna be in the history books, yeah.
We're all well aware of that. This time, abortion is back in a big way. Well, it could be gone in a big way.
Yeah, it's back in the news back in SCOTUS's mind in a big way.
Exactly, which is not good.
Exactly.
Which is something that I would be fearful of. And there are 2 cases this time. The first one is FDA versus the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine. And the second is Moyle v. United States. So the FDA case will be the conclusion of a story we covered, I want to say last year, where a federal judge out of Texas blocked the FDA's approval of mifepristone. This judge, who has never done any science work ever, said, you guys didn't do this right.
How can a fucking Texas judge do that?
Well,
who are you?
As we'll talk about in a little bit, it seems like judges, especially conservative ones, really have beef with administrations doing things.
Yeah, another reason to vote in your state and local elections, because if they're not appointed by like the governor or whatever, then they're probably running in their own elections.
And conservative
judges are bad.
They're running explicitly for political office, right?
Well, some of them, it depends state by state if they're partisan or nonpartisan. Like in Michigan, they're very clearly propped up by an individual party, but they don't run with a D or an R next to their name.
Interesting. I love it when we lie. I love it when we just lie on the ballot. That's
but
so
of course,
cool.
Supreme Court appointed by the president. In some states, their Supreme Court is appointed by their governor. It just depends based on what state you're in. But if you can't vote for them, vote for them. If you can't vote for them, vote for the people. Vote for good people that will be putting them in office.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Because we have some consequential things. That's just a federal judge out of Texas. You know what I mean? That just decided, mifepristone's done.
Oh, that's probably a Trump judge then, right? Like,
I'm pretty sure his name was something, I think like Matthew Kresmicki or something like that.
Okay.
I can't exactly remember the name of him, but either way, that case specifically has been making its way through appellate courts. There have been some things that happened that have kind of reduced its scope, and now it's in front of the Supreme Court of the United States.
Oh, my favorite political body.
Exactly. And while the Supreme Court isn't hearing whether or not to revoke the drug's FDA approval, a ruling against the FDA here would significantly limit access to the drug. Right. This is the one that can be mailed. If SCOTUS rules against this, no more mail pill. No more mailed abortion pill. The Center for Reproductive Rights notes that over 50% of abortions are carried out with the use of mifepristone and its sister drug mifepristol. all of these abortions happen in the first 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Which this is all first trimester things here. You know what I'm saying? This would fall well within the scope of most abortion bans pre-Dobbs.
Yeah. And, it's when we're talking about Colorado and Washington, it's easy to laugh at these people, especially when they're not in power, to laugh at them and write them off and say, like, look how stupid they look. But
yeah, exactly.
When they get into political office or they're in courts or whatever else, like, this is the very real harmful impact of them having political power. They get to do shit like this.
Yeah.
And because the Supreme Court has been stacked by Donald Trump again, he got 3 of the 9 appointments and 3 others are already conservative. Shit like this is just bound to hurt people.
Exactly.
And political outcomes matter. It's just all it is.
And it's pretty crazy considering, again, over 50% of abortions are done this way.
Yeah.
We are just limiting access to a non-invasive procedure. Maybe it's a little bit of a spoiler alert. Experts like legal analysts who have heard oral arguments think that this one is going to go the way of the FDA. They think this will be a good decision.
Hope so.
I'm waiting with bated breath because with a guy like Clarence Thomas on the court, you literally never know.
Hey, 7-2 decision, baby. That's what
we're looking for. I'll be waiting for a scathing dissent. You know what I'm saying?
This guy Clarence Thomas sucks so bad.
It's good. It's good. But the second abortion case, this one, justices seemed a little more privy to do the bad thing when it comes to reporting from the oral arguments. This is Moyle v. United States, and this concerns the intersection of federal and state law as it pertains to emergency abortion access in Idaho. So Idaho has a near total abortion ban with narrow exceptions for life of the mother as well as rape and incest. So it's got the bare minimum, I guess. Still, bar is in hell.
Yeah, but even that is like, what do you consider life of the mother?
Exactly. Even that is incredibly restrictive. There are reports out of Idaho that hospitals have to hella evac patients to the next state over or whatever state near them has access to abortion, not a near total ban.
Yeah.
Just so that they can treat them because doctors are scared of going to prison for 5 years and losing their license and being fined out the ass.
And that's not a very reliable process, nor would it be cheap for anybody involved.
All I'm saying, if I pull up to the emergency room and I'm struggling, because I'm at the emergency room, and the best way to alleviate my condition is to give me an abortion. You know what I mean? I think I would want to just have that done there at the place I went to and not get on a helicopter and go to another state.
Yeah, imagine they're like, okay, well, we can do this procedure for you, but that's going to be $50,000 to use the helicopter. Yeah. You got to pay for the fuel. That's crazy.
Absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. Something I'm against. I condemn.
I'm anti that.
I'm anti that for sure, 100%. Hit a stamp of disapproval right there. But federal law dictates that you have to treat someone who comes into an emergency room with an emergency, and sometimes that includes abortions. Even if it's not life-threatening, sometimes the treatment for your emergent condition, sometimes what you need to get to a stable state is an abortion.
Yeah, it seems like that would cause some legal complications. I bet doctors would be very confused.
And Idaho's ban does not cover that set of exceptions. It's only life of the mother. Yeah. You can suffer all you want, but unless you're literally knocking on death's door, you're not getting the abortion here. And so NBC summarizes it as such, quote, "The legal question in the Idaho case is whether a federal law that requires stabilizing treatment for patients in emergency rooms trumps the state's restrictions in certain circumstances when doctors believe an abortion is required to protect the health of a pregnant woman." Interesting, right? Yeah. That's kind of what we got looking at when it comes to abortion. The second case could be very consequential. The first case people seem to think is going to go the right way. Yeah. But the second case is Moyle v. United States is very much.
It's hard to see the court that voted in favor of Dobbs v. Jackson in the way that they did. Yeah. Now sort of switching up to say like, oh, well, Idaho can't do this. You know what I mean? It seems like they might tell Idaho like, well, yeah, you got to do a little bit more. Yeah. But it doesn't seem like anything good's going to come out of this.
And the thing there is too, even if the court rules somewhat in favor of the United States here, even if the court rules somewhat in favor of federal law trumping state law, like I thought it always did. Like I thought in literally every single case it was
the layered cake, because the layered cake of federalism.
That's the point. You know what I mean? I would think that's how they rule, but even if they do, even if they widen the narrow exceptions a little bit, it's still going to have the chilling effect. Yeah. There are still going to be instances where an uppity conservative prosecutor goes out and decides he wants to try to prosecute X doctor because he heard he did X abortion that's kind of in a gray area.
Right, yeah. And that's the point of these laws, is to prevent people from getting abortions.
Exactly. Yeah. And that doctor's going to think about that situation. That hospital system, the doctor's liability insurance is going to think about that situation. All these different things are going to come together to say, we're just not going to do the abortion thing here. We're just going to helicopter you to the next state over.
And that is the point. It's to harm women and to keep doctors from giving them the procedures they need,
And that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's bad.
Pretty bad, I would argue. I do
that.
think it's important to note that the leading, I think, prosecutor or like the leading legal guy on both of these cases is from a just conservative Christian organization that is making the argument that this is big government overreach.
Of course.
You know what I mean? When federal law trumps state law, that's big government overreach.
When the federal law says, like, you got to help someone in an emergency, that's big state overreach.
It's big government overreach to treat women.
Yeah, well, look, you have to give this person medical treatment.
No.
That's a big state. That's big government overreach.
Oh, nobody's entitled to another person's labor.
The non-aggression principle.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
God damn, no more power of attorney for you. But moving away from abortion, that's not the only thing that's on the docket this week.
Yeah, SCOTUS is cooking.
SCOTUS is popping off.
Fucking cook. They're in the kitchen right now. That bitch is on fire.
Exactly. Especially with this case, right? In United States versus Rami, the great minds at the Supreme Court are kind of wrestling with whether or not it's a good idea to let people who have restraining orders against them for domestic abuse have guns.
Oh my God.
This is an extension of New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin.
Nice.
This is going to be one of the first cases that's actually going to put to test the new legal precedent that the Supreme Court put up with that decision.
Wasn't that the domestic abuser thing? Isn't that a part of the bipartisan gun deal that Biden passed?
I think so. Yeah,
a couple of months ago or last year.
Yeah, that's why it's United States versus
right.
Yes,
because a part of that legislation was closing the loophole related to domestic abusers being able to get firearms.
Which I feel like non-controversially, domestic abusers shouldn't have access to things that can make their domestic abuse easier or more harmful to do.
Yeah.
And two, especially in the instance of a restraining order for domestic abuse, I don't think we should let them have a thing that would let them get across the restraining part of it.
Yeah. And
you know what? You got to stay 300 foot away. I don't think we should give them a 300-foot projectile.
Yeah, that sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah.
But I think the specific loophole was the boyfriend loophole because you already couldn't. And I get maybe they'll overturn all of this. You already couldn't, if you were married and a domestic abuser, you couldn't get a weapon, or at least it was harder. There were further regulations. But if you were just a boyfriend or a partner, generally, that didn't count because you weren't in a relationship that was legally recognized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they closed that loophole. And I'm guessing, you might have more details on this, but I'm guessing SCOTUS is looking at just getting rid of that entirely. All domestic abusers can have their gun rights fully restored.
I'm not sure. I don't know where this goes because it's like if you're gonna tell me that if you have a restraining order for domestic abuse and you can still have a gun, where do we stand on restricting anyone's gun access? You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. If that's not the thing,
and I'm a 2A guy to an extent. Mm-hmm. I believe in the Second Amendment to an extent. Mm-hmm. I believe ardently in red flag laws. I believe some people should not be in possession of a firearm.
Well, it's like maybe they're mad about this because it's stopping all of the off-duty police officers from getting weapons.
Got to be. The fucking police union is backing this case.
We can't let them go home with their service weapon, or we'll get in trouble.
We have to keep their service weapon locked in their vehicle when they're off duty.
Don't look up 50% of police officers.
So that's good.
Yeah,
that's a case that I am eagerly awaiting the result to. But another case,
yeah, eagerly. I'm very excited.
Another case that I'm eager to hear what the court is going to rule is City of Grants Pass v. Johnson. And dear viewer, I'm going to just give you a moment to try and guess what this could be about. It's a city. Mm-hmm. It's a city versus a guy.
Okay,
that's a dynamic that we see in some places, specifically in homelessness dynamics. That's right, baby. We are dealing with homelessness. This case specifically.
I'm sure the conservative Supreme Court will be very generous and kind to homeless people.
I'm sure they're empathetic to the needs of the unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So this case pertains to whether or not ordinances in Oregon that prevent homeless people from sleeping and camping outside are violations of the Eighth Amendment prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. And basically, this will have massive ramifications on the length that Eric Adams and others can go to criminalize homelessness.
So this case specifically is about what cities can do to prevent homeless people from like sleeping or living in certain areas.
Yes, it is.
Like how far they can be physically violent to homeless people.
I think so. I think it's that, or it's just about whether or not you can legislate that. I think it's also whether or not you can criminalize homelessness. Whether or not is a punishment in of itself to say that being homeless, being down on your luck is a crime.
See,
and then whether or not you can beat the shit out of somebody for sleeping on the street.
See, me personally, I'm going to be surprised if Clarence Thomas doesn't go up to his clerk and say, in my opinion, and my written opinion as Clarence Thomas, cities could put homeless people in the meat grinder for all I care.
I wouldn't be surprised if he wrote it with the blood of a homeless person.
Put him in the wood chipper.
I wouldn't be surprised if he carts a homeless person out to oral arguments. He's like, this is not a person. This is not a human.
Exactly.
This is trash I found on the street. That's Clarence Thomas speaking.
Yeah, no, Sam Alito is going to be like, make him into mulch. Like, why? Like, cities can do whatever they want.
Why are we even talking about this? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. Hopefully that's another 7-2 decision with a scathing dissent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there are two other cases that pertain to the power of federal agencies in some EPA versus West Virginia type shit. I think this is an extension of EPA versus West Virginia. And both boil down to just limiting the power of agencies like the EPA by getting the court to overturn Chevron.
Of course,
which is one of the most cited cases in American law. I think this is also considered super precedent, much like Roe v. Wade was.
Yeah, Chevron's a huge case, yeah.
Absolutely massive. Big. Chevron is the only reason that the administrative state works.
Yeah, and I think Clarence Thomas has gunned for it in the past few years, has he not?
Yeah.
Hasn't he said things along the lines of, or at least in some opinions, trying to get at his willingness to get rid of Chevron?
So,
yeah. Or maybe it was Sam Alito. It was one of the two demons. They're all demons, but one of the two higher ranked demons in the layers of hell.
Upper moons.
Yeah.
You could say. Yeah. So according to the New York Times, Chevron is a landmark legal precedent that states that courts must refer to agencies when it comes to their reasonable interpretation of ambiguous statutes. This means that anytime administrations like the EPA, for example, wanted to issue a new regulation, the regulation could be challenged in court on the grounds that Congress did not give the EPA explicit authority to do so.
Yeah.
That's what would happen if Chevron is overturned. So essentially, that means that every regulation a government agency wanted to impart would need to be derived explicitly from an act of Congress. It would explicitly need to be derived from the words within legislation.
And we can expand that beyond the EPA, because the EPA was created via executive order.
Yeah.
We could focus on like Department of Education. That's something within the Constitution
Department
itself.
of Labor.
Right, yeah. Like these things are within the Constitution. These things have been created by an act of Congress, right?
Yeah.
If these agencies can't interpret things, they can't do anything.
Yeah.
There has to be an amount of discretion related to their job. I agree Congress should decide on the broad strokes of what they're allowed to do. Obviously, Congress decides who gets what money. Congress levies taxes. Congress is in charge of a lot of things because it's the body of government that should be theoretically closest to the people, most representative of the people. But if the executive branch can't exercise discretion over the power that they're allotted, then yeah, they functionally can't do anything.
Exactly. And there are arguments to say that Chevron is not necessarily necessary as a thing. You theoretically, you could have a situation whereby Congress, every act of Congress is very well defined and very well thought out.
Right.
But that's not something that happens. That's not... Look, we see the 3 bills that get passed a session.
Yeah. It's always anti-immigration.
Exactly.
it's always something for Israel or some other country we shouldn't be helping.
Depending on who's in, who is the president, who controls Congress, it's a budget with some things that are either good or bad. And that's what gets passed every session of Congress.
It's often
like every
a stalemate,
term.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Other than that, nothing happens. You would completely hold up every single action of every single government agency.
Yeah.
Nothing would be able to happen because as it is now, their power is defined by ambiguous statutes. We are establishing the EPA to regulate the environment. I interpret that as I can issue regulations protecting the environment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and if they overstep their boundaries, then we have processes that can play out for that. Congress can have oversight committee hearings. Congress can write legislation to change what their responsibilities are. People can challenge them in court, right? There's processes to deal with that.
There are checks and balances created.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I feel like we shouldn't have to explain Civics 101 to Clarence Thomas.
You remove Chevron, and essentially these organizations just become an extension of Congress. And when Congress can't get anything done ever, like that's just not a situation where the United States can really function anymore.
Well, right. It's like we shouldn't need Chevron, but we also shouldn't have needed Roe versus Wade.
Exactly.
We shouldn't have needed Brown v. Board. Like, but these are the sort of flimsy precedents that we rely on to keep things in order in this country.
And it's especially like even outside of like the civics, how government functions, arguments about this. Now, if say the ATF wants to go and issue a new rule, someone can challenge that rule in court, not on the grounds of ATF like overstepping their authority as they do now, but they can't. It shifts the burden of proof away from the person who is making the accusation to the organization who is being accused to prove that they have this power via the explicit act of Congress.
Yeah.
As it stands now, the accuser would have to prove, oh, you can't actually do this. Here's this complicated legal argument, whatever.
And that makes sense.
And that's how it should go because these organizations have the power to interpret ambiguous statutes reasonably. Keyword, reasonably. They can overstep that. Sometimes they do. Most times they don't.
Yeah.
That's a good way to run the system.
And not to mention more practically, outside of like more philosophical understandings of what federalism is, you don't want Congress deciding every little thing that an agency does.
No.
Like you don't want Congress to be deciding literally what every curriculum is in the Department of Education. You don't want them for the Department of Agriculture to decide like what CO2 level should be in the soil and shit like that. Like we don't want our Congress, who very rarely ever gets anything done, to be responsible for literally all of these things when we have often nonpartisan lifetime political officials, not like lifetime in the sense that they have to serve a lifetime, but they dedicated their career to it. Experts. Yeah. We have experts that do these things and do them efficiently and do them in a way that is nonpartisan according to the rules that their agency has set. And if you let like Congress do it all, then it's going to be more tumultuous than it is now.
And that's exactly the argument too, is Congress does not have the time for that shit. And these agencies are staffed by experts. Congress is not an expert in everything. The hundreds of members of Congress, however many there are, the like, I don't know, fucking 300 members of Congress in total, both chambers, and the bicameral legislature are not all experts in labor, the economy, guns, the environment, literally everything else. Yeah. They are not experts in everything. We should defer.
Yeah, it's like we don't want Congress like walking into a lady who's been working at the Department of Housing and Urban Development for the last 45 years and telling her like, okay, you can't do anything of what you've been doing. Exactly. No more issuing grants to, I don't know, Metro Detroit. you need to start doing X, Y, and Z specifically as to what Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote in this bill. Yes. Like we don't want that. It's just not what we want to do.
It would not be good. It would functionally kneecap our entire government.
Yes.
Maybe some people do want that actually.
Well, and even Clarence Thomas that's like the libertarian dream. Yeah. But like even in like a perfect direct democracy in a country of 350 million people, we have to defer some power sometimes. Yeah. And the goal should be for our government to be as responsive as possible to the people, but some amount of bureaucracy in a country this large is always going to exist. And I think even if we had a higher degree of direct democracy in this country, we would still want experts to be in charge of things like soil quality and food quality and other stuff like that. We wouldn't want that to be up to the country as a whole. We'd want people that know what they're talking about to handle that, and then the people as a whole can decide the sort of broad strokes of where we go as a nation.
Yes, I don't think Ted Cruz should have his hands all over the day-to-day actions of the Department of Agriculture.
Well, especially when a lot of these people do what they do and they want to gut certain agencies specifically because it would benefit wealthy interests. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like these massive corporations would love it if they wouldn't have to deal with these regulations anymore.
And it's also nice because these administrations, they are political. There is political nature to them.
Of course,
but they are more separated from the political process than Congress is.
Well, they're
even the Supreme Court, I would argue.
They're political in the sense that it like refers to government and broader power dynamics within society, but they're not political in the sense that like Democrat versus Republican.
Exactly.
Right? Like the people that are appointed there are lifetime in those industries. They have studied and they're experts in these industries. Now, you could argue that some of them maybe don't deserve their jobs, whatever, nepotism and so on, favoritism, but largely speaking, broadly speaking, the people in these administrations and these agencies know what they're talking about. And if we just completely gut them or hand all of their power power of interpretation over to Congress, then they just can't do anything.
It wouldn't work.
Yeah,
it wouldn't work.
Kneecaps the entire government,
and that's the long short of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So Chevron, I would like it if it stays in place. I think the New York Times mentioned in their article about this that Chevron has been cited 70 different times, I think, by the Supreme Court or just in general in major precedent.
And Clarence Thomas is going to be the one to put a stop to it.
But since 2016, it hasn't been mentioned once by the court. So I'm not too hopeful about this one.
See, 2016, Trump was elected.
2016, Trump was elected.
And then after that,
Amy Coney Barrett.
No, the first one was Neil Gorsuch. No, was it Brett Kavanaugh or Neil Gorsuch?
I think it was Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Amy.
And then Amy Coney Barrett. But his first one was in 2017, right?
I think so.
I think Scalia died. I can't remember exactly who died. Maybe Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy? No, that was a different Kennedy. Anthony Kennedy? Whatever.
Basically, as soon as Trump reshapes the court, the modern Supreme Court, they stop talking about super precedent.
It's almost like elections have consequences. Man, if people at the time in 2016 could have known that he would have gotten 3 Supreme Court appointments over the next 4 years, that's ridiculous.
It'd have been criminal to not let Hillary. Oh my God, I don't even want to say, because like that's awful.
Hillary Clinton sucks. But
it's
like,
awful.
She's bad. I think her administration probably would have been worse in every way compared to what Biden is doing now. I'm sure Biden is getting far more progressive things done than Hillary Clinton ever would.
Absolutely.
But 3 Supreme Court appointments? We're talking about keeping Roe v. Wade.
We've talked about entire generations of trust in an institution whisked away.
Yes.
I genuinely have no faith in the Supreme Court as an institution to do anything principled.
I think the Supreme Court is like more unpopular than Congress at this point.
Which is insane.
Everybody hates the Supreme Court. And that's why like people on the left have been arguing recently that Biden needs to run this campaign against the Supreme Court. He needs to be saying that like, you need to elect me because the Supreme Court has run away with their power and is taking freedoms away.
He's not wrong.
And it's not a lie, right?
Like, it's not entirely wrong. And that's a great way to put it, because I'm pretty sure the Supreme Court is the least popular they've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
I think the world is the most ideal when people have no idea who the justices are.
Yeah. And it's like,
you know what I mean?
Hillary Clinton probably wouldn't have appointed like Marxists to the court. No. But at the very least, they would not have been Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch.
Yeah, I'd argue it'd probably be more people like Ketanji Brown Jackson. Just like general people who are just fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think she's probably the most like left-leaning person on the court. Not that she's like a leftist or anything, but she very clearly in a lot of the decisions is the furthest to the left on all of these issues. Maybe we don't even get somebody that progressive. Maybe just your fucking standard liberal old white man, right? But even that, at the very least, Jesus Christ, would not be as bad as we have now. Because that shit's cursed for the next 40 years.
Or if, the notorious RBG would have retired.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
But even then, like,
there was so much discourse around that. I'm glad we weren't around at that time.
Trump still gets 2, even if
2 is insane.
Ruth Bader
then
Ginsburg
it's 5-4.
retires. Yeah.
But what's his name that constantly flip-flops? Breyer? No, he retired.
Roberts.
He flip-flops a little bit. At least then things would have been somewhat fair.
Yeah, but it should, super conservative majority, or super majority of conservatives,
man. Yeah. Ridiculous. There is Trump v. United States.
Oh, the best one.
Which that is where SCOTUS is going to decide whether or not Trump can stand trial, whether or not you can prosecute him for trying to overturn the 2020 election.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not it's even not whether or not he did it.
Yes.
Whether or not these charges will stick, but whether or not you can even charge him at all.
Yeah, and the broader question, of course, which I don't know if they're actually going to contend with this, but the broader question a lot of people are asking is, can you prosecute crimes that were committed by presidents when they were president?
Yeah.
Because that's the big deal. Is Trump was still president during January 6th in 2021. And the question seems to be, can Trump be punished for something he did as president that he's arguing he did because he was president? I don't know if they'll go so far as to say you can prosecute any president for things they did as they were president, but I would imagine if, they have any sense left that they'll say like, yeah, Trump can be prosecuted for Jan 6.
Which
I really hope that's the outcome.
They have to, because it's like, other than that, what they're ruling on if Trump could indeed kill someone on Fifth Avenue,
right?
Like
exactly,
as president, like that's insane.
Yeah, and look, I'm open to the argument that every president since Truman has been a war criminal. Truman himself probably a war criminal. Didn't have to drop the bomb.
Real as hell.
Didn't have to drop the
Real
bomb.
As hell.
And so you can make the argument that okay, then after a president gets out of office, literally all of them will be tried for some kind of crime. And I'd say don't threaten me with a good time. But if you think that that's sort of dangerous to our democracy more broadly, one, maybe don't commit these crimes.
This is true.
But also, two, this clearly, January 6th very clearly is not something Trump had to do as a part of being president.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a number of war crimes or generally just crimes we could find that Trump committed as he was president because he was president. January 6th was not one that is required of a typical presidency.
And it's that the Georgia SOS call, not within the purview of the regular things that you do as president, not within your official duties.
You don't have to do that.
I can tell you that right now. And while we're on the topic of January 6th.
Oh, yeah, my favorite. Where were you on January 6th?
Oh, I remember.
I was in D.C.
I remember I was at Target.
I was at the Capitol.
I was like, it was a honeypot, let me tell you.
No, look, the FBI was in the crowd.
A fucking federal agent came up to me. He said, "Hey, man, we should totally go storm this." And then what if we just like and then he motioned at the barricade.
He was actually pulled it down, and then he sort of put his hand on my back and pushed me forward.
He's like, "Yeah, man, we should totally go. We should totally go." And then he started yelling, "Get him, get him!" And I kept running. I didn't know what to do, and eventually I got out of it. You know,
there was actually this one federal officer that was he was like, "Hey, can you help me set this up?" And after we were done, it was the noose.
Yeah,
outside.
What's going on? And I got out of there because I had to get back to my fucking used car dealership. But either way, there is going to be a case in front of the Supreme Court about whether or not the January 6th defendants can be charged with like something related to obstruction. There's some January 6th defendant case up at the Supreme Court. And me personally, I think that's corny. Me personally, I think the January 6th thing has been so dragged out.
Oh, so you think we should free all the political prisoners?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
I mean, are people still being like tried for
I don't think
stuff?
so. That's why it's like I feel like it's just getting dragged out.
Oh, well,
I don't think like trials are still active. I know there were a couple people that went to prison for like a couple years.
Yeah,
which it's like to the extent with which they went to prison for what they did, like. I don't fucking know. Probably not that hard.
I mean, there are people like bringing zip ties and stealing shit.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah. Bringing zip ties is crazy.
Well, it's kind of an admission. It's like, yeah, you're trying to like kidnap Nancy Pelosi.
Exactly.
Like
Lock the motherfuckers with zip ties up. I don't really give a shit about the dudes that were just kind of there and followed the crowd and went in. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. But I've always been kind of a January 6th was a big event, but not that big kind of guy.
Well, yeah, and it's like if we're not going after the people who very clearly pushed for this to happen, like Trump and fucking Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, like if we're not going after those guys, then we're not stopping a future one from happening.
Like if we're not going after the people who incited the event, I don't know. I don't know if going after literally
the car dealership owners.
Yeah, because it's kind of insane the extent to which they went after literally everyone who was even like there. You know what I mean? If somebody did that for any other protest, I think more alarm bells would ring in people's heads.
Well, I mean, it wasn't a protest though.
This is true. It was a riot. And they literally stormed the fucking Capitol. Like the optics are insane.
I get it. Like, why aren't we going after the literal leaders of January 6th? I get it's hard to prove that like Ted Cruz was a part of it, but he was very clearly egging it on. Donald Trump, of course, most of all, was egging it on, but nobody in an official position of power is being charged with a crime here.
Yeah.
It's all the people on the lower levels, which you could say is kind of par for the course. It's how these things always happen. But if we want to prevent a future January 6th or whatever the date's going to be, then go after the people who were actively inciting an insurrection.
Yeah, like me personally, I'm not storming the Capitol. Like that's insane levels of thinking you can get away with that. You know what I mean?
It's like purely going after Confederate soldiers and not the generals.
Yeah.
It's just like, what are we doing?
Kind of, yeah, exactly. But it's just like, I don't know. I feel like it's been dragged out. And part of my like disdain for January 6th discourse surrounds the idea that I feel like January 6th is a losing issue when it comes to rhetoric. Like I know it gets the liberals crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I know it gets the liberals riled up, but I think it loses more moderate people when we talk about like locking people away for like 5 years and shit, whatever. You know what? I just think it's like a losing issue. I think most people are annoyed with it and don't think that it was that big of a deal.
Yeah,
so when we constantly like hammer it home, I think January 6th peaked at the January 6th the day. And then when we were doing the trials and found out that information, that was good. But ever since then, it's been like, I feel like this information should have faded to the back burner. Yeah,
maybe optically it's not the best strategy, but I do think it's important to keep in mind, like, this is the kind of people Trump's got in his orbit, the kind of guy Trump is like, yeah, they will overthrow the government if they get the chance.
Yes, Trump supporters are people that will do insane things for Trump.
Well, not even just supporters, like the officials that Trump has around him, people like what was it, fucking Stephen Miller and like Steve Bannon, who's actually going to jail soon for obstruction of Congress.
I saw that, yeah.
But like the people that Trump will hire will absolutely do an insurrection if they get the chance.
Which is insane.
Which I think, yeah, that's like the important component of Jan 6. But optically, maybe it doesn't resonate with people.
But the focus has always been on, look at these people, like, how would they do this? Like,
yeah.
Why would they storm
these sacred
Capitol?
halls?
Like, these sacred halls, look how they desecrated Nancy Pelosi's desk.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I mean? January 6th is a weird topic, I feel like. But there's also some cases about like social media that I think are weird. Those will be notable. There's one about whether or not social media has like the right to resist governments going in and telling them what they can and cannot censor. I think that one's coming out of Florida. Is social media, like Ron DeSantis. I think it's Paxton versus Netcore or something like that. I think it's out of Florida and Texas.
That's good.
Where they're alleging that like social media companies are censoring conservative speech in such a way that like violates their First Amendment right. And on the other end of the spectrum, the social media companies are arguing that it's our First Amendment right to, because corporations are people.
Of course.
It's our First Amendment right to moderate the content that's on our website and see things. You get rid of things as we see fit.
Man, SCOTUS siding against massive corporations would be very interesting.
That would be interesting.
It would kind of just reveal what the ideological through line is.
Yeah, I feel like both decisions kind of would be weird and like have weird consequences. There's another case about whether or not the Biden administration overstepped when they told Twitter to silence the Hunter Biden story during the election or something like that. So that's a case of the Supreme Court. There's one about bump stocks.
Who told Twitter to silence the story?
The Biden administration.
Well, Biden wasn't president.
Oh, yeah, wait a second.
Because that's always been the thing that confused me is people are always like, well, Biden and the DNC demanded that the story be stopped, but it's like Trump was the president at that time. So I don't know what like legal ramifications there'd be. I guess if you're running for office, you can't ask I don't even know if they directly asked for it.
I guess they're arguing that maybe the DNC as an app. I didn't read too much into it because that's kind of a whatever case to me. That's always been a whatever story. Like, of course they're going to tell them to suppress misinformation or whatever information during the election. Like that's kind of whatever to me. I see why conservatives are mad about it, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah.
I think they're silly anyway, but so that's a case.
And I don't think that would have changed the results of the election, although some conservatives argue like if people would have known, they would have voted for Trump. I don't think so.
Oh, they knew.
Yeah.
Everyone knew because you wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Honestly, if they let Twitter talk about the story, I think it gets less traction. I think it's not dragged on to the way it is now.
I think nobody pays attention. It just falls in the background.
Everything from that era just dragged. It's just dragged, and it's still around today, and it's still annoying.
The laptop from hell narrative is one of the worst by far.
That's good. And then there's another case about bump stocks in the ATF, which bump stocks bad. I will say that. This one is specifically about whether or not the ATF can, I don't know, make fucking machine gun rules, which I think they should because machine guns are outlawed. I think they should be able to define what a machine gun is, but would the founders?
But have you considered that under no pretense should the government take weapons from citizens?
Shall not be infringed.
Shall not be infringed.
I'm a textualist.
Exactly.
I'm a textualist, so shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. Give me my bump stock.
Exactly.
And also take power away from federal agencies.
And let me have a nuke. The government can have one. Why not me?
Come on.
That's a Poolean take right there. Tim Poolean thought. Well, in other like trial news, of course, Steve Bannon's going to go to jail for like 4 months for obstructing Congress. And then, because he's a political prisoner. And also, Alex Jones has been ordered by a court to liquefy his assets so he can pay. Oh,
that's what I heard. He was selling his ranch.
I think he owes like, I don't know if it's billions. I feel like billions is $1 billion. Is it $1 billion?
I think in total, wasn't it like $1 billion? I feel like I remember that number.
Yeah, he's got to sell his ranch, and he was on his show crying, like literally sobbing. Which I think he was playing it up so people would donate, but
of course,
that's just very funny to me.
I can't imagine donating to Alex Jones, man. I can't imagine the kind of person you got to be.
Or buying like the Doomsday kits or whatever he sells nowadays.
See, the Doomsday kits, I understand because some like I disagree, but I understand why people prep.
Well, and if you're watching Alex Jones, you're kind of already there.
Exactly. Like I understand the deep-seated paranoia that one must have to do that, but to just like give money to the dude after that, I don't. There's some psychological things there that need to be broken down.
It was just, look, I love to see my enemy suffer. That's all I'm going to say. That's all. I have an agenda to push.
I do.
I have an agenda to push.
I'm a rhetorician. I get on here and I do propaganda.
Anyway, I think that ends off SCOTUS news.
That sums up what we got looking forward to in the court. So over the next month, we will have some riveting decisions coming through.
We're going to have lots to talk about. Really is a filler episode, huh? Because we're going to have debates, debate prep next week.
If Chevron is to be overturned, I hope it's overturned before the debate. Or, honestly, I would kind of be debates on a Thursday night, isn't it?
Yeah, June 27th.
Decisions come out that day.
Oh, really?
Decisions usually come out on Thursdays.
Oh, that'll be good.
I don't know if it's like an official decision day like this Thursday is, the day after the pod airs, but it might be. Could you imagine if, I don't know, the Supreme Court says, actually, you don't have to help a hurting woman at all when she comes to the emergency room, and they ask about that on the debate stage?
Oh, man, what would Trump's response be? I don't even know.
What would Trump's response be? Everybody wanted Roe overturned, so I did it.
Everybody, left and right, was asking me to overturn Roe. Everyone.
Exactly. People on the left, they said this case was predicated on false ground, Trump. Like, we can't have this as precedent. It's an embarrassment to the nation. Golly.
Well, anyway, looking ahead at the next few weeks, on top of SCOTUS decisions, we also have World War III.
We do.
Because apparently Russia called the U.S. an enemy officially. Apparently that's the first time that's ever happened.
I heard headlines that said this was the first time in history, and I laughed because it's like the Cold War. I don't know. I feel like we haven't really been on good terms with Russia.
I guess maybe they never said like enemy explicitly.
Which it's like, okay, we're doing everything but.
Yeah, and I don't take this too serious because first of all, something you always have to remember, anytime we talk, nothing ever happens.
Yes.
We are firmly in the nothing ever happens camp. Nothing ever happens. But also, from what I know, it was a spokesperson. It wasn't Putin directly that said the U.S. is an enemy. And also, it's like, I don't think anything comes from that.
And Ted Cruz calls Russia the enemy every fucking other day.
Yeah, if anything, it's going to be like Israel that drags us into a broader regional war.
Yeah, we're not
because Israel's going to go
Russia.
after Hezbollah next, and they're going to need our help because Hezbollah is an actual militia.
Yeah,
and they can't just stomp on them like they've stomped on Gaza.
150,000 strong or something like that. Oh my goodness.
They're not going to have as easy of a time as they're having right now, and they're not even having an easy time right now.
Yeah.
So,
but the Russia enemy thing is just, I feel like that's just not news.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That is something that should never make a headline.
It is not 1976.
And it's like, have you seen Congress yap?
Mm-hmm.
Chip Roy is constantly talking. Dudes like Chip Roy constantly on there talking about China is literally hell spawn. Everyone, like, come on. Our elected officials have said much worse.
Yeah, you're telling me them calling us an enemy is going to get us to launch the nukes?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
After we already got this guy convicted at The Hague or some bullshit, like I don't know.
I doubt it's going to happen. Of course, we got debates incoming as we talked about. Remember fundraiser live stream?
Yes,
very exciting things coming up.
Bring some bands for PCRF.
Exactly. And next week, I think we will take a little dive into debate predictions, of course. We'll talk about what we expect to happen. Maybe take a look at the polling data because Joe Biden's been slipping. And maybe we can figure out the RFK of it all. See if he'll end up being on stage.
Maybe what is it? May fundraising numbers will have come out by then, and maybe they'll talk about that on stage as well.
Yeah, but we have a couple of weeks for that. And I will say for those that listened all the way, and especially for the patrons, video essay number 2. Coming soon.
What could this one be about?
I'm almost done with it.
What could this one be about?
I'm almost done with it.
Goodness.
Hopefully have it done in the next week or two. And of course, going to be posted on Patreon first.
Always.
So if you want access to that early, got to become a patron.
You know exactly what to do.
Like these very beautiful people that support us.
Fine, beautiful, gorgeous people. That I'm about to give a special thanks to right now, starting with.
I wish we could appoint these people to the Supreme Court.
I wish we could appoint them to all the federal agencies that will soon be irrelevant. You know what I mean? Give them positions of power where they really don't have to do much.
Oh man, I wish we could just do like favoritism. What is it, like the spoils something or other? Not nepotism because we're not family, but I guess we could call it nepotism because we're a big Hiddo family.
This is true. Yeah, we are
the spoils system. That's what it is. Once we win political office, we reward all of our friends rather than people that are. I can't even say they're not qualified because they could do any job perfectly.
Exactly, and you know what? Chevron gets overturned, like it probably will. You know what I mean? And then you get to head one of these agencies that can't really do much anymore. That sounds like the dream job. You get to head some administrative bloat where you really don't have like a real job and. You get paid fast stacks.
Sounds like the dream, really.
That's what I want.
And you get pension?
Put me in a podcasting department.
Oh my god.
I'll
regulate those podcasts.
Head yapper. Oh my goodness, man. You know what? Honestly, just make me not Speaker of the House. Make me Karine Jean-Pierre, whatever her fucking job
press
is.
secretary? Yeah.
Make me press secretary. Make me come out there. I could go out there and say no. So easily.
Because then you don't even have to say you're doing anything. Like, oh, yeah, the fucking EPA can't do anything.
That's what I'm saying. It's like
Department of Labor announced nothing.
Exactly. Or just make me press secretary for the big man himself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I just go out there and I'll never answer a question.
Mm-hmm.
Or make me a military spokesperson. I can go out there
God.
and say, Israel's going to do their own thing.
Give me John Kirby's job.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate on what Israel would do. That's not what we're here to do.
They're a sovereign nation. We don't
Guys,
give them
big news just came out. Guys, huge news just happened. Oh my God, what's the news? What is it? Can you give us any details? I don't want to speculate this time right now. Like,
we have a big proposal. We're working towards a deal, but I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Well, can you tell me what the deal is about? Nah, I can't.
Nah, but like, why would you even ask?
Yeah, that's a bit. I already told you I wasn't going to do this. Like, I already told you I'm not going to do this back and forth. Like.
Anyway, let's thank these beautiful people.
Speaking of people I will do back and forth with, special thanks to Caden Kraut, Lord Tyler Radiant, Chris the Postman, Christy Beck, Dylan B, Andrew Harris, Mike Chaplinsky, Mattias T, Omar Zuno, Clayton LaFed, Mark Yeager, Caleb Joy, Rich Toro Tari, Gavin Mayer Maldonado, Hunter W, Fergalaki, Max Vezquez, Jacob Rogers, Colton Mooberry, Fixer Punk, Jim Egbers, Jeff Muzzy, Bagel Burrito, Cincy Alex, Joe Stenstrom, Adrian Sandoval, Chloe Sam 601, Colleen Cutts, Veryuk, Jennifer DeVoe, Big Bird Titty, Crawfishing, Bennett Bennington III, Alexia Benanti, Nietzsche, Big Booty Beatdown, Sam Maloney, Two-Headed Boy, Ben Shapiro's Boyfriend, Jonathan Cassis, Luke O'Shea, Cucker Tarlson, Danielle Jackson, The Word of Microsoft, Jennifer Sines, Aaron and his Gundam Guns. I had a little mark on my screen, so I thought it was spelled differently. Dirty ass laptop, my bad, gang. Aaron and his Gundams.
Leftist.
Darth Father, Tailored for Content, Corey Chambers, Ellie N, Devin Hatchard, Retro Mondo, Emma the Dude Slayer, Veronica aka V, Raxon, Ash Smith, The Grotler, Flower Clown, Beetlebugs, Murder in a Trench Coat, Lonnie Rogers, Slavic and Sapphic, Casey Lynn Kelly, Snake Eyes, In Hope of Giants, AK Ghana, Quana, Don,
Zach Lantian, Info Russell, Austin Greif, Marcus Corbett, Caleb Roper, Taylor Rensock, Cammy, Tylen Freeman, Steak Daddy, Tay Tay, Isaac Hodges, Madeline C, Pab the Pab 69, Kayla Lowe, Anna Volinic, Casey C, Say Yes to West, August, Particular Pickman, Sir Capalot, Jeff Sines, Howard the Duck, Brennan is Egg, JR, Drew Batchilder, Froggy Gumdrop, Zen doing their best, Jackie Boy, Shameless, Coherent Babble, Sasha, MJ is Sharp, Michaela Muncie, The Walls 3000, Jared Finch, Tactical Snowflake, Son of Ander, Vanilla Bryce, Chris T, Kishan Lala, Amanda R, Hanky Panky, Tyler J, Damian Blues, Ashley White, Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels, Lalo Valesco, Particulon, Memfrez, Gorgeous Girl Mukes, Classified Jones, Lauren, Unchrestmatic Boar, Sasquatch, Rhonda Stiletto, Midwest Marxist, Joe the Mailman, Gary from West Michigan, Shawnee GG, Juniper Not Jupiter, Stacked Crabs, Patrick Simpson, I Crowley, Urban Peach, Lord of Forlorn, Holt Forsyth, and my mom. Thank you all so much for supporting the show on Patreon. We couldn't do it without you.
Amazing.
If you are not on this list and you want to be, Head in the Office, or patreon.com/Head in the Office pod. Go become a patron.
It's the easiest thing you'll ever do.
And this is the best way to support the show.
You want your name on there on the little list. It's so fun. Go over there and do it.
And you want your name to, do you want to live forever? Do you want to be immortalized?
You know, they say a person dies twice. Once when they actually die, and again when they're forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
You could live here on the internet with us.
Do you want to die 3 times?
Yeah. Oh.
First, when you die. When you're forgotten.
Yeah.
And when you stop being a patron to Hiddo.
Oh my
God. That is
you
the
want to
third
die
death.
4 times? You want to die 4 times? First when you die. The second when you're forgotten. Third when you're no longer a Hiddo patron. Fourth when you stop condemning Hamas.
Oh my God.
Oh,
you don't want to die all 4 times. You don't want to die all 4 times.
Please, no. Please,
go become a patron if you want your name on the list. And thank you for listening.
Have a great week.